Yes, preparing to live stream. Okay. Great. Yes, I believe we are now live streaming. Welcome. I'm Paul Sugarman of the Instant Shakespeare Company, and we're very happy today to host the Shaw Project doing Fannys' first play by Shaw. And now over to the artistic director of the Shaw Project, David Cedar.
Welcome. Today we're doing one of Shaw's lighter plays that deals with one of his perennial subjects, parents and children. And so I think we shall just let the play speak for itself. Let's all introduce ourselves and who we are playing. I will be reading the roles of Mr. Trotter, a critic, and Juggins, a footman.
And I'll be Mrs. Gilby. I'm Paula Hosa.
I'm David Palmer Brown, and I'm reading Joseph Knox and Count O'Dowda.
Drew.
Hi, my turn. Hi, I'm Drew Bolander, and I'm reading Lieutenant Duvalier, and I think it's pronounced Flauner Bannel.
Yes, that's right.
Flauner Bannel.
Ben?
I'm sorry, now you want me to talk? My name's Ben, and I'll be Vaughn, and I'll be Gilby?
Gilby. Robin
Gilby.
Yeah, Robin Gilby. Okay, let's see who we Rose.
Hi, Rose Sangenberger. I'm reading Dora Delaney.
And we can't leave out Leah. She's the title character.
Hi, I'm Leah Schwartz. I'm playing Fanny O'Dowda and Margaret Knox.
Dylan.
Hey, I'm Dylan. And thank you, Drew, for asking about that pronunciation because I was debating it the whole time. I'm reading Savoyard and Bobby.
And see, who did I leave out?
Me.
Christina. Sorry.
I'm Christina Osterling. I'm reading Mrs. Knox and Gilbert Gunn.
Okay. That's everybody, right? I think so. Nobody's saying no. All right. Let us start with he calls it here the induction. We might call it a prologue. We are at the end of a saloon in an old-fashioned country house, Florence Towers, the property of Count O'Dowda. It has been curtained off to form a stage for a private theatrical performance. A footman in grandiose Spanish livery enters before the curtain.
Mr. Cecil Savoyard. Oh, beg pardon, sir. I thought the Count was here. He was when I took up your name. He must have gone through the stage into the library. This way, sir.
Hello. When does the play begin? 8:30?
9, sir.
Oh, good. Well, will you telephone to my wife at the George that it's not until 9?
Right, sir. Mrs. Cecil Savoyard, sir?
No, Mrs. William Tinkler. Don't forget.
Mrs. Tinkler, sir. Right, sir. Here is the Count, sir. Mr. Cecil Savoyard, sir.
Pray excuse me, Mr. Savoyard. I suddenly recollected that all the bookcases in the library were locked. In fact, they've never been opened since we came from Venice. But as our literary guest will probably use the library a good deal, I just ran in to unlock everything.
Oh, you mean the dramatic critics? Yes, I suppose there's a smoking room.
My study is available. An old-fashioned house, you understand. Won't you sit down, Mr. Savoyard?
Thanks. I had no idea you were going to appear in the piece yourself.
No, I am not. I wear this costume because, well, perhaps I had better explain the position if it interests you.
Certainly.
Well, you see, Mr. Savoyard, I am rather a stranger in your world. I am not, I hope, a modern man in any sense of the word. I'm not really an Englishman. My family is Irish. I've lived all of my life in Italy, in Venice mostly. My very title is a foreign one. I am a Count of the Holy Roman Empire.
Where's that?
At present, nowhere except as a memory and an ideal. But I am by no means an ideologue. I am not content with beautiful dreams. I want beautiful realities.
Yeah. I'm all with you there when you can get them.
Why not get them? The difficulty is not that there are no beautiful realities, Mr. Savoyard. The difficulty is that so few of us know them when we see them. We have inherited from the past a vast treasure of beauty, of imperishable masterpieces of poetry, of painting, of sculpture, of architecture, of music, of exquisite fashions in dress, in furniture, in domestic decoration. We can contemplate these treasures. We can reproduce many of them. We can buy a few inimitable originals. We can shut out the 19th century.
The 20th.
To me, the century I shut out will always be the 19th century, just as your national anthem will always be God Save the Queen, no matter how many kings may succeed. I found England befouled with industrialism. Well, I did what Byron did. I simply refused to live in it. You remember Byron's words. I am sure my bones would not rest in an English grave, or my clay mixed with the earth of that country. I believe the thought would drive me mad on my deathbed could I suppose that any of my friends would be base enough to convey my carcass back to her soil. I would not even feed her worms if I could help it.
Did Byron say that?
He did, sir.
It don't sound like him. I saw a good deal of him at one time.
You? But how is that possible? You are too young.
I was quite a lad, of course, but I had a job in the original production of Our Boys.
My dear sir, not that Byron, Lord Byron, the poet.
Oh, I beg your pardon. I thought you were talking of the Byron. So, you prefer living abroad?
Well, I find England ugly and Philistine. Well, I don't live in it. I find modern houses ugly. I don't live in them. I have a palace on the Grand Canal. I find modern clothes prosaic. I don't wear them, well, except, of course, in the street. My ears are offended by the Cockney twang. I keep out of hearing of it. I speak and listen to Italian. I find Beethoven's music coarse and restless, and Wagner's senseless and detestable. I do not listen to them. I listen to Cimarosa, to Pergolesi, to Gluck, and to Mozart. Nothing simpler, sir.
It's all right when you can afford it.
Afford it? Oh, my dear Mr. Savoyard, if you are a man with a sense of beauty, you can make an earthly paradise for yourself in Venice on £1,500 a year, whilst our wretched, vulgar, industrial millionaires are spending 20,000 on the amusements of billiard markers. I assure you, I am a poor man according to modern ideas, but I have never had anything less than the very best that life has produced. It is my good fortune to have a beautiful and lovable daughter, and that girl, sir, has never seen an ugly sight or heard an ugly sound that I could spare her. And she has certainly never worn an ugly dress or tasted coarse food or bad wine in her life. She has lived in a palace, and her perambulator was a gondola. Now you know the sort of people we are, Mr. Savoyard. You can imagine how we feel here.
Rather out of it, eh?
Out of it, sir? Out of what?
Well, out of everything.
Out of soot and fog and mud and east wind, out of vulgarity and ugliness, hypocrisy and greed, superstition and stupidity. Out of all this, and in the sunshine, in the enchanted region of which great artists alone have had their secret, in the sacred steps of Byron, of Shelley, of the Brownings, of Turner and Ruskin. Don't you envy me, Mr. Savoyard?
Some of us must live in England, you know, just to keep the place going. Besides, though, mind you, I don't say it isn't all right from the high art point of view and all that, but the 3 weeks of it would drive me melancholy mad. However, I'm glad you told me, because it explains why it is you don't seem to know your way about much in England. I hope, by the way, that everything is given satisfaction to your daughter.
Oh, she seems quite satisfied. Yeah, she tells me that the actors you sent down are perfectly suited to their parts and very nice people to work with. I understand she had some difficulties at the first rehearsals with the gentleman you call the producer, because he hadn't read the play. But the moment he found out what it was all about, everything went smoothly.
Haven't you seen the rehearsals?
Oh, no. I haven't been allowed to even to meet any of the company. All I can tell you is that the hero is a Frenchman. I asked her not to have an English hero, and that is all I know. I haven't been consulted even about the costumes, though there I think I could have been some use.
But there aren't any costumes.
What? No costumes? Do you mean to say it is a modern play?
I don't know. I didn't read it. I handed it to Billy Joyce, the producer, you know, and left it to him to select the company and so on. But I should have had to order the costumes if there had been any. There weren't.
Oh, well, I understand. She has taken the costumes into her own hands. She is an expert in beautiful costumes. I venture to promise you, Mr. Savoyard, that what you are about to see will be like a Louis XIV ballet painted by Watteau. The heroine will be in an exquisite columbine, her lover a dainty harlequin, her father a picturesque pantaloon, and the valet who hoodwinks the father and brings about the happiness of the lovers, a grotesque but perfectly tasteful Punchinello or Mascarille or Sangarelle.
I see. That makes 3 men, and the clown and the policeman will make 5? That's why you wanted 5 men in the company.
Oh, my dear sir. You don't suppose that I suppose I mean that vulgar, ugly, silly, senseless, malicious, and destructive thing, the harlequinade of the 19th century English Christmas pantomime. What was it, after all, but a stupid attempt to imitate the success made by the genius of Grimaldi 100 years ago? My daughter does not know of the existence of such a thing. I refer to the graceful and charming fantasies of the Italian and French stages of the 17th and 18th centuries.
Oh, I beg pardon. I quite agree that harlequinades are rot. They've been dropped at all smart theatres, but from what Billy Joyce told me, I got the idea that your daughter knew her way about here and hadn't seen a lot of plays. Had she no idea she'd been away in Venice all the time?
Oh, she has not been. I should have explained that 2 years ago. I should have explained that 2 years ago. My daughter left to complete her education at Cambridge. Cambridge was my own university. And though, of course, there were no women there in my time, I felt confident that if the atmosphere of the 18th century still existed anywhere in England, it would be at Cambridge. About 3 months ago, she wrote to me and asked whether I wished to give her a present on her next birthday. Of course, I said yes. And she then astonished and delighted me by telling me that she had written a play and that the present she wanted was a private performance of it with real actors and real critics.
Yes, that's what staggered me. It was easy enough to engage a company for a private performance. It's done often enough. But the notion of having critics was new. I hardly knew how to set about it. They don't expect private engagements, and so they have no agents. Besides, I didn't know what to offer them. I knew that they were cheaper than actors because they get long engagements, 40 years sometimes. That's no rule for a single job. But then there's such a lot of them. On first nights, they run away with all your stalls. You can't find a decent place for your own mother. It would have cost a fortune to bring the lot.
Of course, I never dreamt of having them all. Only a few first-rate representative men.
Just so. All you want is a few sample opinions. Out of 100 notices, you won't find more than 4 at the outside that say anything different. Well, I've got just the right 4 for you. And what do you think it has cost me?
Well, I cannot guess.
10 guineas and expenses. I had to give to Flann Banal 10. He wouldn't come for less, and he asked 50. I had to give it, because if we hadn't had him, we might just as well have had nobody at all.
But what about the others? If Mr. Flanell...
Flann Banal.
Oh, if Mr. Banal got the whole 10?
Oh, I managed that, as this is a high-class sort of thing. The first man I went for was Trotter.
Oh, indeed. I am very glad you have secured Mr. Trotter. I have read his playful impressions.
Well, I was rather in a funk about him. He's not exactly what I call approachable, and he was a bit standoff at first. But when I explained and told him, your daughter...
You did not say that the play was by her, I hope.
No, that's been kept a dead secret. I just said your daughter has asked for a real play with a real author and a real critic, and all the rest of it. The moment I mentioned the daughter, I had him. He has a daughter of his own. Wouldn't hear of payment, offered to come just to please her. Quite human. I was surprised.
Extremely kind of him.
Then I went to Vaughan, because he does music as well as the drama, and you said you thought there would be music? I told him Trotter would feel lonely without him, so he promised like a bird. Then I thought you'd like one of the latest sort, the chaps that go for the newest things and swear they're old-fashioned. So I nailed Gilbert Gunn. Before we'll give you a representative team. By the way, they'll be here presently.
Oh, before they come, Mr. Savoyard, could you give me any hints about them that would help me to make a little conversation with them? I am, as you said, rather out of it in England, and I might unwittingly say something tactless.
Well, let me see. As you don't like English people, I don't know that you'll get on with Trotter, because he's thoroughly English. Never happy except when he's in Paris, and speaks French so unnecessarily well that everybody there spots him as Englishman the moment he opens his mouth. We're very witty and all that. Pretends he turns up his nose at the theatre and says, people make too much fuss about art. But that's only his modesty, because art is his own line, you understand? Mind you, you don't chaff him about Aristotle.
Why should I chaff him about Aristotle?
But I don't know, but it's one of the recognized ways of chaffing him. However, you'll get on with him all right. He's a man of the world and a man of sense. There, one you'll have to be careful about is Vaughan.
In what way, may I ask?
Well, Vaughan has no sense of humor. And if you joke with him, he'll think you're insulting him on purpose. Mind, it's not that he doesn't see a joke. He does, and it hurts him. A comedy scene makes him sore all over. He goes away black and blue and pitches into the play for all his work.
But surely that is a very serious defect in a man of his profession.
Yes, it is, and no mistake. But Vaughan is honest and don't care a brass farthing what he says or whether it pleases anybody or not. And you must have one man of that sort to say the things that nobody else will say.
Well, it seems to me to carry the principle of division of labor too far, this keeping of the honesty and the other qualities in separate compartments. What is Mr. Gunn's specialty, if I may ask?
Gunn is one of the intellectuals.
But aren't they all intellectuals?
Lord, no, heaven forbid. You must be careful what you say about that. I shouldn't like anyone to call me an intellectual. I don't think any Englishman would. They don't count, really, you know? But it's still rather the thing to have them. Gunn is one of the young intellectuals. He writes plays himself. He's useful because he pitches into the older intellectuals who are standing in his way. But you may take it from me that none of these chaps really matter. Flann Bannell's your man. Bannell really represents the British playgoer. When he likes a thing, he may take your oath that there are 100,000 people in London that really like it if they can only be got to know about it. Besides, Bannell's knowledge of the theatre is an inside knowledge. We know him, and he knows us. He knows the ropes, he knows his way about, he knows what he's talking about.
Age and experience, I suppose.
Age? I should put him at 20 at the very outside myself. It's not an old man's job, after all, is it? Bannell may not ride the literary high horse like Trotter and the rest, but I take his opinion before any other in London. He's the man in the street, and that's what you want.
Well, I am almost sorry you didn't give the gentleman his full terms. I should not have pledged the 50 guineas for a sound opinion. He may feel shabbily treated.
Well, let him. It was a bit of side his asking 50. After all, what is he? Only a pressman. Jolly good business for him to earn 10 guineas. He's done the same job often enough for half a quid, I expect.
Papa, the critics have come, and one of them has a cocked hat and a sword like a... Oh, I beg your pardon.
This is Mr. Savoyard, your impresario, my dear.
How do you do?
Pleased to meet you, Miss O'Dowd. The cocked hat is all right. Proctor is a member of the new academic committee. He induced them to go in for a uniform like the French Academy, and I asked him to wear it.
Mr. Trotter, Mr. Vaughan, Mr. Gunn, Mr. Flann Bannell.
Mr. Trotter. Count O'Dowd, gentlemen, Mr. Trotter.
Yeah, have you had the pleasure of meeting a confrère?
No, sir. I have no right to my costume except the right of a lover of the arts to dress myself handsomely. You are most welcome, Mr. Trotter.
Mr. Vaughan.
How do you do, Mr. Vaughan?
Quite well, thanks.
Mr. Gunn.
Delighted to make your acquaintance, Mr. Gunn.
Very pleased.
Mr. Flann Bannell.
Very kind of you to come, Mr. Bannell.
Don't mention it.
Gentlemen, my daughter. We are very greatly indebted to you, gentlemen, for so kindly indulging her whim. Oh dear. The dressing bell, gentlemen. As our play begins at 9, I have had to put forward the dinner hour a little. May I show you to your rooms?
Mr. Trotter, I want to say something to you about this play.
No, that's forbidden. You must not attempt to souffleur the critic.
Oh, I would not for the world try to influence your opinion.
But you do. You are influencing me very shockingly. You invite me to this charming house where I'm about to enjoy a charming dinner. And just before the dinner, I'm taken aside by a charming young lady to be talked to about the play. How can you expect me to be impartial? God forbid that I should set up to be a judge or do more than record an impression. But my impressions can be influenced. And in this case, you are influencing them shamelessly all the time.
Don't make me more nervous than I already am, Mr. Trotter, if you know how I feel.
Naturally, your first party, your first appearance in England as hostess, but you're doing it beautifully. Don't be afraid. Every nuance is perfect.
It's so kind of you to say so, Mr. Trotter, but that isn't what's the matter. The truth is, this play is going to give my father a dreadful shock.
Nothing unusual in that. I'm sorry to say, half the young ladies in London spend their evenings making their fathers take them to plays that are not fit for elderly people to see.
Oh, I know all about that, but you can't understand what it means to Papa. You're not so innocent as he is.
My dear young lady.
I don't mean to be morally incorrect, or morally innocent. Everybody who reads your articles know you're as innocent as a lamb.
What?
Yes, Mr. Trotter, I've seen a good deal of life since I came to England, and I assure you that to me you're a mere baby. A dear, good, well-meaning, delightful, witty, charming baby, but still just a wee lamb in a world of wolves. Cambridge is not what it was in my father's time.
Well, I must say.
Just so. That's one of our classifications in the Cambridge Fabian Society.
Classifications? I don't understand.
We classify our aunts into different sorts, and one of the sorts is the I must says.
I withdraw, I must say. I substitute blame my cats. No, I substitute blame my kittens. Observe, Miss O'Dowda, kittens. Blame them, smack them. I guess what is on your conscience. This play to which you have lured me is one of those in which members of the Fabian Society instruct their grandmothers in the art of milking ducks. And you are afraid it will shock your father. Well, I hope it will. And if he consults me about it, I shall recommend him to smack you soundly and pack you off to bed.
That's one of your prettiest literary attitudes, Mr. Trotter, but it doesn't take me in. You see, I'm much more conscious of what you really are than you are yourself, because we've discussed you thoroughly at Cambridge. And you've never discussed yourself, have you? Of course you haven't. So you see, it's no good trottering at me.
Trottering?
That's what we call it at Cambridge.
If it were not so obviously a stage cliche, I should say, damn Cambridge. As it is, I blame my kittens. And now, let me warn you, if you're going to be a charming, healthy young English girl, you may coax me. If you're going to be an unsexed Cambridge Fabian virago, I'll treat you as my intellectual equal, as I would treat a man.
Oh, but how few men are your intellectual equals, Mr. Trotter?
I'm getting the worst of this.
Oh, no, why do you say that?
May I remind you that the dinner bell will ring presently?
What does it matter? We're both ready. I haven't told you yet what I want you to do for me.
Nor have you particularly predisposed me to do it. Except out of pure magnanimity. What is it?
I don't mind this play shocking my father morally. It's good for him to be shocked morally. It's all that the young can do for the old to shock them and keep them up to date. But I know this play will shock him artistically, and that terrifies me. No moral consideration could make a breach between us. He would forgive me for anything of that kind sooner or later, but he never gives way on a point of art. I daren't let him know that I love Beethoven and Wagner, and as to Strauss, if he heard 3 bars of Electra, it'd part us forever. Now, what I want you to do is this. If he's very angry, if he hates the play because it's a modern play, will you tell him that it's not my fault, and that its style and construction and so forth are considered the very highest art nowadays? That the author wrote it in the proper way for repertory theatres of the most superior kind. You know the kind of plays I mean.
I think I know the sort of entertainments you mean, but please do not beg a vital question by calling them plays. I don't pretend to be an authority, but I have at least established the fact that these productions, whatever else they may be, are certainly not plays.
The authors don't say they are.
I am aware that of one author, who is, I blush to say, a personal friend of mine, resorts freely to the dastardly subterfuge of calling them conversations, discussions, and so forth, with the express object of evading criticism. But I am not to be disarmed by such tricks. I say they are not plays. Dialogues, if you will, exhibitions of character, perhaps, especially the character of the author. Fictions, possibly, though a little decent reticence as to the introducing of actual persons and thus violating the sanctity of private life might not be amiss. But plays? No. I say no, not plays. If you will not concede this point, I can't continue our conversation. I take this seriously. It's a matter of principle. I must ask you, Mr. O'Dowda, before we go a step Father, do you or do you not claim that these works are plays?
I assure you, I don't.
Not in any sense of the word.
Not in any sense of the word. I loathe plays.
That last remark destroys all the value of your admission. You admire these theatrical nondescripts. You enjoy them.
Don't you?
Of course I do. Do you take me for a fool? Do you suppose I prefer popular melodramas? Oh, have I not written most appreciative notices of them? But I say they're not plays. They're not plays. I can't consent to remain in this house another minute if anything remotely resembling them is to be foisted on me as a play.
I fully admit they're not plays. I only want you to tell my father that plays are not plays nowadays, not in your sense of the word.
There you go again, in my sense of the word. You believe that my criticism is merely a personal impression.
You always said it was.
Pardon me, not on this point. If you had been classically educated...
But I have.
Cambridge. If you had been educated in Oxford, you would know that the definition of a play has been settled exactly and scientifically for 2,260 years. When I say that these entertainments are not plays, I don't mean in my sense of the word, but in the sense given to it for all time by the immortal Stagirite.
Who's the Stagirite?
You don't know who the Stagirite was?
Sorry, never heard of him.
This is Cambridge education. Well, my dear young lady, I'm delighted to find there's something you don't know, and I shan't spoil you by dispelling an ignorance which, in my opinion, is highly becoming to your age and sex. So we'll leave it at that.
But you will promise to tell my father that lots of people write plays just like this one, that I haven't selected it out of mere heartlessness.
I can't possibly tell you what I shall say to your father about the play until I've seen the play. But I'll tell you what I shall say to him about you. I shall say that you're a very foolish young lady, that you've got into a very questionable set, and that the sooner he takes you away from Cambridge and its Fabian society, the better.
It's so funny to hear you pretending to be a heavy father. In Cambridge, we regard you as an bel esprit, a wit, an irresponsible, a Parisian immoralist. Très chic.
I?
There's quite a trotter set.
But upon my word.
They go in for adventures and call you an amorous.
They wouldn't dare.
You always make such delicious fun of the serious people. Your insouciance.
Stop talking French to me. It's not a proper language for a young girl. Great heavens, how is it possible that a few innocent pleasantries should be so frightfully misunderstood? I've tried all my life to be sincere and simple, to be unassuming and kindly. I've lived a blameless life. I've supported the censorship of in the face of ridicule and insult. And now I'm told that I'm a center of immoralism, of modern minxism, a trifler with the most sacred subjects, a Nietzschean, perhaps a Shavian.
Do you mean you are really on the serious side, Mr. Trotter?
Of course I'm on the serious side. How dare you ask me such a question?
Then why don't you play for it?
I do play for it. Short, of course, of making myself ridiculous.
But not to make yourself ridiculous for the sake of a good cause. Oh, Mr. Trotter, that's vieux jeu.
Don't talk French. I will not allow it.
But this dread of ridicule is so frightfully out of date. The Cambridge Fabian Society...
I forbid you to mention the Fabian Society to me.
Its motto is, you cannot learn to skate without making yourself ridiculous.
Skate? What has that got to do with it?
That's not all. It goes on. The ice of life is slippery.
Ice of life, indeed. You should be eating penny ices and enjoying yourself. I won't hear another word.
We're all waiting in the drawing room, my dear. Have you been detaining Mr. Trotter all this time?
I'm so sorry. I must have just a little brush up.
My dear, you should be in the drawing room. You should not have kept him here.
I know, don't scold me. I had something important to say to him.
Well, I shall ask him to take you into dinner.
Yes, Papa. Oh, I hope it will go off well.
Yes, love, of course it will. Come along.
Just one thing, Papa, whilst we're alone. Who was the Stagirite?
The Stagirite? Do you mean to say you don't know?
Haven't the least notion.
Oh, the Stagyrite was Aristotle. By the way, don't mention him to Mr. Trotter.
Curtain. Act 1. In the dining room of a house in Denmark Hill, an elderly lady sits at breakfast reading the newspaper. Her chair is at the end of the oblong dining table furthest from the fire. There is an empty chair at the other end. The lady is a placid person. Her husband, Mr. Robin Gilby, not at all placid, bursts violently into the room with a letter in his hand.
This is a nice thing. This is a bloody...
Leave it at that, please. Whatever it is, bad language won't make it better.
Yes, put me in the wrong as usual. Take your boy's part against me.
Oh, when he does anything right, he's your son. When he does anything wrong, he's mine. Have you any news of him?
I've a good mind not to tell you.
Well, then don't. I suppose he's been found. That's a comfort at all events.
No, he hasn't been found. The boy may be at the bottom of the river for all you care.
Then what have you got in your hand?
Got a letter from Monsignor Grenfell from New York, dropping us, cutting us. That's a nice thing, isn't it?
What for?
How do I know what for?
What does he say?
This is what he says. My dear Mr. Gilby, the news about Bobby had to follow me across the Atlantic. It did not reach me until today. I'm afraid he is incorrigible. My brother, as you may imagine, feels that this last escapade has gone beyond the bounds, and I think myself that Bobby ought to be made to feel that such scrapes involve a certain degree of reprobation, as you may imagine. And we know no more about it than the babe unborn.
What else does he say?
I think my brother may have been just a little to blame himself. So between ourselves, I shall, with due and impressive formality, forgive Bobby later on. But for the present, I think it had better be understood that he is in disgrace and we're no longer on visiting terms. As ever, yours sincerely. Well, that is a nice slap in the face to get from a man in his position. That is what your son has brought on me.
Well, I think it's a rather nice letter. He as good as tells you he's only letting on to be offended for Bobby's good.
Oh, very well. Very well. Have the letter framed and hang it up over the mantelpiece as a testimonial.
Oh, don't talk nonsense, Rob. You ought to be thankful to know that the boy is alive after his disappearing like that for nearly a week.
Nearly a week? A fortnight, you mean? Where's your feelings, woman? It was 14 days yesterday.
Oh, don't call it 14 days, Rob, as if the boy was in prison.
How do you know he was not in prison? It's got on my nerves, so I'd even believe that.
Oh, don't talk silly, Rob. Bobby might get into a scrape like any other lad, but he'd never do anything low.
Lady wishes to see Mr. Bobby's parents, sir.
There's Mr. Bobby's parent. I disown him.
Yes, sir.
You mustn't mind what your master says, Juggins. He doesn't mean it. Well, I never.
What's up now?
Miss D. Delaney, darling Dora. Just like that, in brackets. What sort of person, Juggins?
What's her address?
The West Circular Road. Is that a respectable address, Juggins?
A great many most respectable people live in the West Circular Road, madam, but the address is not a guarantee of respectability.
So it's come to that with him, has it?
Oh, now don't jump to conclusions, Rob. How do you know? And is she a lady, Juggins? You know what I mean.
in the sense in which you are using the word, no, madam.
I'd better try what I can get out of her. Show her up. You don't mind, do you, Rob?
Oh, so long as you don't flounce out and leave me alone with her.
I wonder what she wants, Rob.
If she wants money, she shan't have it. Not a farthing. A nice thing, everybody seeing her on our doorstep. If it wasn't that she may tell us something about the lad, I'd have Juggins put the hussy out into the street.
Miss Delaney.
How do you do both? I'm a friend of Bobby's. He told me about you once. In a moment of confidence, of course, he never let on who he was at the police court.
Police court?
Juggins, a chair?
Oh, I've let it out, haven't I? But he's the right sort, I can see that. You won't let on downstairs, will you, old man?
The family can rely on my absolute discretion.
I don't know what you'll say to me. You know, I really had no right to come here, but then what was I to do? You know, Holy Joe, Bobby's tutor, don't you? But of course you do.
I know Mr. Joseph Grenfell, the brother of Monsignor Grenfell, if it is him of which you are speaking.
No! Don't tell me that old geezer has a brother, a Monsignor! And you're Catholics! I never knew it, although I've known Bobby ever so long. But of course, the last thing you find out about a person is their religion, isn't it?
We're not Catholics. But you see, when the Samuelses got an archdeacon's son to form their boy's mind, Mr. Juby thought Bobby ought to have a chance too. And the Monsignor is a customer. Mr. Juby consulted him about Bobby, and he recommended a brother of his that was more sinned against than sinning.
Oh, she don't want to hear about that, Maria. What's your business?
I'm afraid it's all my fault.
What was all your fault? I'm half distracted. I don't know what's happened to the boy. He's been lost these 14 days.
A fortnight, Rob?
And not a word have we heard from him since.
Oh, don't fuss, Rob.
I will fuss. You've no feeling. You don't care what becomes of the lad.
You've been anxious about him, of course. How thoughtless of me not to begin by telling you he's quite safe. Indeed, he's in the safest place in the world, as one might say. Safe under lock and key.
Oh my! Do you mean that when he was in the police court, he was in the dock? Oh, Maria! Oh my great Lord! What has he done? What has he got it? What has he got for it? Will you tell me, or will you see me go mad on my own carpet?
Yes, oh dear.
Well,
I'll tell you, but don't you worry, he's all right. I came out myself this morning. There was such a crowd and a band. They thought I was a suffragette, only fancy. You see, it was like this. Holy Joe got to talking about how he'd been a champion sprinter at college.
a what?
A sprinter. He said he was the fastest 100 yards runner in England. We were all in the old cowshed that night.
What old cowshed?
Oh, get on!
Oh, of course you wouldn't know. How silly of me. It's a rather go-ahead music hall, sort of, in Stepney. We call it the old cowshed.
Does Mr. Grenfell take Bobby to music halls?
No, Bobby takes him, but Holy Joe likes it. Fairly laps it up like a kitten, poor old dear. Well, Bobby says to me, darling.
Why does he call you darling?
Oh, everybody calls me darling. It's sort of a name I've got, Darling Dora. You know, well, he says, darling, if you can get Holy Joe to sprint 100 yards, I'll stand you that squiffer with the gold keys.
Does he call his tutor Holy Joe to his face?
Well, what will he call him? After all, Holy Joe is Holy Joe, and boys will be boys.
What's a squiffer?
Oh, of course, excuse my vulgarity, a concertina. There's one in a shop in Green Street, ivory inlaid with gold keys and Russian leather bellows. And Bobby knew I hankered after it, but he couldn't afford it, poor lad, though I knew he just longed to give it to me.
Maria, if you keep interrupting with silly questions, I shall go out of my senses. Here's the boy in jail, and me disgraced forever, and all you care to know is what a squiffer is.
Well, remember, it has gold keys. Man wouldn't take a penny less than £15 for it. It was a presentation one.
Where is my son? What has happened to my son? Will you tell me that and stop cackling on about your squiffer?
Oh, ain't we impatient? Well, it does you credit, oh dear. And you needn't fuss, there's no Grace, Bobby behaved like a perfect gentleman. Besides, it was all my fault. I'll own it. I took too much champagne. I was not what you might call drunk, but I was bright and a little beyond myself. And I'll confess it, I wanted to show off before Bobby because he was a bit taken by a woman on the stage and she was pretending to be game for anything. You see, you've brought Bobby up too strict. When he gets loose, there's no holding him, for he does enjoy life more than any lad I ever met.
Never you mind how he's been brought up. That's my business. Now tell me how he's been brought down. That's yours.
Oh, don't be rude to the lady, Rob.
I'm coming to it, old dear, so don't you be so headstrong. Well, it was a beautiful moonlight night and we couldn't get a cab on the nod, so we started walking. Very jolly, you know, arm in arm, dancing along, singing and all that. When we came to Jamaica Square, there was a young copper on the point duty on the corner. I says to Bob, dearie boy, is it a bargain about the squiffer if I make Joe sprint for you? Anything you like, darling, he says. I love you. I put on my best company manners and I stepped up to the copper. If you please, sir, said I, can you direct me to Carmine Square? I was so genteel and talked so sweet that he fell to it like a bird. I never heard of any such square in these parts, he says. Then, says I, what a silly little officer you must be. And I gave his helmet a chuck behind that, knocked it over his eyes and did a bunk.
Did you what?
A bunk. Joe did one too, all right, sprinted faster than he ever did in college, I bet, the old dear. He got clean off too. As he was overtaking me halfway down the square, we heard the whistle, and at the sound of it, he drew away like a streak of lightning. And that was the last I saw of him. I was copped in the dock road myself, rotten luck, wasn't it? I tried innocent and genteel and all the rest, but Bobby's hat done me in.
And what happened to the boy?
Only fancy, he stopped to laugh at the copper. He thought the copper would see the joke, poor lamb. He was arguing about it when the two who took me came along to find out what the whistle was for and brought me in with them. Of course, I swore I'd never seen him before in my life, but there he was in my hat and I in his. The cops were very spiteful and laid it out for all they were worth, drunk and disorderly, assaulting a police officer and all that. I got 14 days without the option because, you see, well, the fact is I'd done it before and been warned. Bobby was a first offender and had the option, but dear boy had no money left and wouldn't give you away by telling his name. Anyhow, he couldn't have brought himself to buy himself off and leave me there, so he's doing his time. Well, it was 240 shillings, and there were only 28 shillings in the world. If I pawn my clothes, I shan't be able to earn any more. So I can't pay the fine and get him out. But if you'll stand £3, I'll stand £1 and that'll do it. If you like to be very kind and nice, you can pay for the lot, but I can't deny that it was my fault, so I won't press you.
My son in jail.
Oh, cheer up, old dear. It won't hurt him. Look at me after 14 days of it. I'm all the better for being kept a bit quiet. You mustn't let it prey your mind.
The disgrace of it will kill me. And it will leave a mark on him to the end of his life.
Not a bit. Don't you be afraid. I've educated Bobby a bit. He's not the mollycoddle he was when you had him in hand.
Oh, indeed, Bobby is not a mollycoddle. They wanted him to go in for single stick at the Young Men's Christian Association, but of course I couldn't allow that. He might have had his eye knocked out.
Now listen here, you.
Oh, ain't we cross?
I want none of your gaiety here. Now this is a respectable household. You've gone and got my poor innocent boy into trouble. It's the like of you that's the ruin of the likes of him.
So you always say, you dears. But you know better. Bobby came to me, I didn't come to him.
Would he have gone if you hadn't been there for him to go to? Tell me that. You know why he went to you, I suppose.
It was dull for him at home, poor lad, wasn't it?
Oh, no, I'm at home on first Thursdays, and we have the Knoxes to dinner every Friday. Margaret Knox and Bobby are as good as engaged. Mr. Knox is my husband's partner. Mrs. Knox is very religious, but she's quite cheerful. We dine with them on Tuesdays, so that's 2 evenings' pleasure every week.
You know, we've done what we could for the boy. Short of letting him go into temptations of all sorts, he can do what he likes. I mean, what more does he want?
Oh dear, he wants me. And that's about the long and short of it. I must say, you're not very nice to me about it. I've talked to him like a mother. I've tried my best to keep him straight, but I don't deny I like a bit of fun myself. And we both get a bit giddy when we're light-hearted. Him and me are a pair, I'm afraid.
Don't talk foolishness, girl. Now, how could you and he be a pair? You being what you are and he being brought up as he has been, with the example of a religious woman like Mrs. Knox before his eyes. I can't understand how he could bring himself to be seen in the street with you. I haven't deserved this. I have done my duty as a father. I've kept him sheltered. It's creatures like you that take advantage of a child's innocence ought to be whipped through the streets.
Well, whatever I may be, I'm too much of a lady to lose my temper. And I don't think Bobby would like me to tell you what I think of you. For when I start giving people a bit of my mind, I sometimes use language that's beneath me. But I'll tell you once and for all that I must have money to get Bobby out, and if you won't fork it out, I'll hunt up Holy Joe. He might get it off his brother, the Monsignor.
Now, you mind your own concerns. My solicitor will do what is right. I will not have you paying my son's fine as if you were anything to him.
That's right. You'll get him out today, won't you?
It's likely I'd leave my boy in prison, innit?
I'd like to know when they'll let him out.
You would you? Well, you're going to meet him at the prison door.
But don't you think any woman that had the feelings of a lady?
Oh, yes, I know. Here, I must buy the lad's salvation, I suppose. How much will you take to clear out and let him go?
What good would that do, old dear? There are others, you know.
That's true. I must send the boy himself away.
Where to?
Anywhere, as long as he's out of reach of you and your like.
Well, then I'm afraid you'll have to send him out of the world, old dear. I'm sorry for you. I really am. Though you mightn't believe it, and I think your feelings do you real credit. But I can't give him up just to let him fall into the hands of people I couldn't trust, can I?
What? Where's the police? Where's the government? Where's the church? Where's respectability and right reason? What's the good of them if I have to stand here and see you put my son into your pocket as if he was a chattel slave? And you hardly out of jail as a common drunken disorderly. What is the world coming to?
It's a lottery, isn't it, old dear?
Where did you buy that white lace? I want to match to match a collarette of my own, and I can't get it at Perry and John's.
Oh, Nag and Petals, 1 and 4p. It's machine handmade.
Oh, I never give more than 1 and 2p. But I suppose you're extravagant by nature. My sister Martha was just like that. Pay anything she was asked.
What's 2p to you, Mrs. Bobby, after all?
Mrs. Gilby.
Of course, Mrs. Gilby, I am saying.
Oh, Bobby must have looked funny in your hat. Why did you change hats with him?
I don't know. One does, you know.
Oh, I never did. Oh, the things people do. I can't understand them. Bobby never told me he was keeping company with you. His own mother.
Oh, excuse me. Can't help smiling.
Mr. Gilby has gone to Wormwood Scrubs, madam.
Have you ever been in a police court, Juggins?
Yes, madam.
Oh, I hope you'd not been exceeding, Juggins.
Yes, madam. I had exceeded the legal limit.
Oh, that. Why do they give a woman a fortnight for wearing a man's hat and a man a month for wearing hers?
I didn't know they did, madam.
Oh, it doesn't seem justice, does it, Juggins?
No, madam.
Well, goodbye. So pleased to have made your acquaintance.
Don't mention it. I'm sure it's most kind of you to receive me at all.
Oh, I must go off now and order lunch. What was it you called the concertina?
A squiffer, dear.
A squiffer, of course. How funny.
Isn't she an old love? How do you keep your face straight?
It's what I'm paid for.
here, dear boy. Your name isn't Juggins. Nobody's name is Juggins.
My orders are, Mr. Laney, that you are not to be here when Mr. Gilby returns from Wilmwood Scrubs.
That means telling me to mind my own business, doesn't it? Well, I'm off to. Toodaloo, Charlie, darling.
And curtain. Let's take a 5-minute break and return at 2 o'clock for Act 2.
Hi, thank you all so much. This is a lot of fun. Just to let people know, just since we do take the break here, we still are, it's still live. So I just will come in here and let you know about what's going on, what's coming up with Instant Shakespeare and and the Shaw Project. And we're going to do, we've done 3 in-person readings in May at various branches of the libraries, and so that's fun. And we've got more coming up in June 11th. We're doing As You Like It at the 58th Street branch, and June 25th. I still have yet to determine what we're going to be doing at the Bloomingdale branch, which is at 150 West 100th Street. So if people, especially those who are on the Upper West Side, if they have something they want to do, please let me know about that. And then we'll have more of the schedule forthcoming. And I forget the other things that we have that we've already scheduled, some more things with the Shaw Project as well. And also an in-person reading that David Cedar will be playmastering of The Merchant of Venice on July 30th at the 53rd Street branch. So as we work out things, we'll let people know. So, and also if anybody's got any other questions or comments.
Yes, I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have to give a serious shout out to David Brown for the juice he got out of his first "My Dear Sir."
Did I hear my name?
Did you hear what I said?
No.
The juice you got out of your first "My Dear Sir."
Oh.
I mean, I felt the steak juice dripping off the side of that.
Oh, Lord.
Yes. Well, Shaw, as with Shakespeare, certainly had a love of words and of using them and of giving great opportunities.
You have to
for
match it
actors
with an actor who just wants to chew it up.
Well, it's funny because people talk about Shaw and Ibsen, Chekhov as being modern, the sort of first modern playwrights. But I also think they forget they come out of a 19th century tradition. So the characters are, I still think, larger than life, and they tend to play them very politely and close to the vest, and in my experience. And I think that's forgetting that they come out of larger than life sort of 19th century characterizations.
Good point.
And it doesn't mean that it has to be melodrama, but they're not the. So much of the time when I watch, especially English productions of these plays, they're so polite and close to the vest and so sort of underplayed because they're modern. And I think, no, this is opera. They come from a more operatic tradition in the 19th century.
Yeah. And don't forget that Shaw himself was a music critic and had that all in his,
So this is music.
Shaw writes arias for people.
Yeah.
He really does. His speeches are constructed.
And
Quick note before we start, if anybody else is having trouble, my computer volume is up full, and other things, if I put on YouTube or something, sound loud. I'm not hearing a lot of people, so if everybody could check, make sure their microphone setting is turned up to a decent level.
Yes. That's number one. And number two, we're sort of caught in an echo chamber this afternoon.
We're what?
Echo chamber. An
That's
echo
the,
chamber.
that's the software. I don't think we can do
Yeah, so we
anything
need
about
to, well, people need to slow down a bit and enunciate more
that. Ah.
because we're losing.
I'm not having that problem.
Everything sounds fine on my end.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm not having that.
Well, nevertheless, I think we can,
Well, you guys are young.
I'm hearing everything clearly, but I
Might
do.
we? Go ahead.
I beg to differ with you, Ben. There are plenty of young folk here, but I'm not one of them.
Yeah, the ones whose hearing is fine, the one who are hearing everything fine are all the under 40 crowd.
I hear it fine.
David hears fine.
But I only hear fine because I have my headphones on, and that's like because I've got my AC on, and otherwise I wouldn't hear anybody.
I think you all sound beautiful.
So is
Brown nose.
Before we go farther, is it Ghibli or Ghibli?
Gilby, I think.
Gilby?
People have saying Jill.
Gilby. That's what I think.
That's what I would think, but people have been saying Gilby, so I'll go with what's been said.
Well, both have been said, so that's why I was asking.
Well, it's my name, so I pick Gilby.
Gilby.
Well, it's also Paula's name, so she has a say in this too.
Paula, I'm the man of the house. Gilby.
Silly me. I didn't have my hearing aids in. However, I'm not really having trouble hearing people. I'm having trouble understanding people. That's why I'm asking people to slow down a bit. Because,
We should probably start.
We should start. Let me set the scene for Act 2. Okay. On the afternoon of the same day, Mrs. Knox is writing notes in her drawing room at a writing table which stands against the wall. Mrs. Knox, whose back is presented to an obsolete upright piano at the opposite side of the room. The sofa is near the piano. Mr. Knox comes in almost furtively. She is surprised to see her husband at home during business hours.
What brings you home at this hour? Have you heard anything?
No. Have you?
No. What's the matter?
I believe Gilby has found out.
What makes you say that?
Well, I don't know. I didn't like to tell you. You'll have enough to worry about without that. But Gilby has been very queer ever since it happened. I can't keep my mind on business as I ought, and I was depending on him. But he's worse than me. He's not looking after anything, and he keeps out of my way. His manner's not natural. He hasn't asked us to dinner, and he's never said a word about our not asking him to dinner. After all these years, when we've dined every week as regular as clockwork, it looks to me as if Gilby's trying to drop me socially. Well, why should he do that if he hasn't heard?
I wonder. Bobby hasn't been near us either. That's what I can't make out.
Oh, that's nothing. I told him Margaret was down in Cornwall with her aunt.
Joe!
Well, I got to tell lies, ain't I? You won't. No, somebody's got to tell them.
That only ends in our not knowing what to believe. Oh, Mrs. Gilby told me Bobby was at Brighton for the sea air. There's something queer about that. Gilby would never let the boy loose by himself among the temptations of a gay place like Brighton without his tutor. And I saw the tutor in Kensington High Street the very day she told me.
Oh, if the Gilbys have found out, it's all over between Bobby and Margaret and all over between us and them.
It's all over between us and everybody. When a girl runs away from home like that, people know what to think of her and her parents.
She had a happy, respectable home, everything.
There's no use going over it all again, Joe. If a girl hasn't happiness in herself, she won't be happy anywhere. You'd better go back to the shop and try to keep your mind off it.
Oh, I can't. I keep fancying everybody knows it and is sniggering about it. I'm at peace nowhere but here. It's a comfort to be with you. It's a torment to be with other people.
Oh, there, Joe, there. I'm sure I'd have you here always if I could. But it can't be. God's work must go on from day to day, no matter what comes. We must face our trouble and bear it.
Just look at the people in the street going up and down as if nothing happened. It seems unnatural, as if they all knew and didn't care.
Oh, if they knew, Joe, there'd be a crowd round the house looking up at us. Oh, you shouldn't keep thinking about it.
Oh, I know I shouldn't. You have your religion, Amelia, and I'm sure I'm glad it comforts you. But it doesn't come to me that way. I've worked hard to get a position and be respectable. I've turned many a girl out of the shop for being half an hour late at night. And here's my own daughter, gone for a fortnight without word or sign, except a telegram to say she's not dead and that we're not to worry about her.
Joe, look!
Margaret, with a man?
Run down, Joe, quick! Catch her! Save her!
Oh, she's shaking hands with him. She's coming across to the door.
Oh, do as I tell you. Catch the man before he's out of sight.
Mother! Mother!
Well, miss.
Oh, Mother, do go out and stop Father making a scene in the street. He rushed at him and said, "You're the man who took away my daughter," loud enough for all the people to hear. Everybody stopped. We shall have a crowd round the house. Do something to stop him. Oh, Monsieur Duvillay, I'm so sorry. So ashamed. Mother, this is Monsieur Duvillay, who has been extremely kind to me. Monsieur Duvillay, my mother.
Frenchman! It only needed this.
Father, do please be commonly civil to a gentleman who has been of the greatest service to me. What will he think of us?
But it's very natural. I understand Mr. Knox's feelings perfectly.
If I've made any mistake, I'm ready to apologize. But I want to know where my daughter has been for the last fortnight.
She has been, I assure you, in a perfectly safe place.
Will you tell me that place? I can judge for myself how safe it was.
Holloway Gaol, was that safe enough?
Holloway Jail? You've joined the suffragettes.
No, I wish I had. I could have had the same experience in better company. Please sit down, Monsieur Duvillay.
It was nothing. An adventure, nothing.
Drunk and assaulting the police, 40 shillings or a month.
Margaret, who accused you of such a thing?
The policeman I assaulted.
You mean to say you did it?
I did. I had that satisfaction at all events. I knocked 2 of his teeth out.
And you sit here coolly and tell me this?
Well, where do you want me to sit? What's the use of saying things like that?
My daughter in Holloway Jail.
All the women in Holloway were somebody's daughters. Really, Father, you must make your mind up to it. If you had sat in that cell for 14 days making your mind up to it, you would understand that I'm not in the humor to be gaped at while you're trying to persuade yourself that it can't be real. These things really do happen to real people every day, and you read about them in the papers and think it's all right. Well, they've happened to me. That's all.
But they shouldn't have happened to you. Don't you know that?
They shouldn't happen to anybody, I suppose, but they do. And really, I'd rather go out and assault another policeman and go back to Holloway than keep talking round and round about it like this. If you're going to turn me out of the house, turn me out. The sooner I go, the better.
Yeah, that is impossible, mademoiselle. Your father has his position to consider. To turn his daughter out of doors would ruin him socially.
Oh, you put her up to that, have you? Oh, and where did you come in, may I ask?
I came in at your invitation, at your amiable insistence, in fact, not my own. But you need have no anxiety on my account. I was concerned in the regrettable incident which led to your daughter's incarceration. I got a fortnight without the option of a fine on the ridiculous ground that I ought to have struck the policeman with my fist. I should have done so with pleasure had I known, but as it is, I struck him on the ear with my boot, a magnificent moulinet, I must say, and was informed that I had been guilty of an act of cowardice, but that for the sake of the entente cordiale, I should be dealt with leniently. Yet Miss Knox, who used her fist, got a month, but with the option of a fine. I did not know this until I was released, when my first act was to pay the fine. And here we are.
You ought to pay the gentleman the fine, Joe.
Oh, certainly.
Oh, please, it does not matter. Well, if you insist, thank you.
I'm ever so much obliged to you, Monsieur Duvallay.
Can I be of any further assistance, mademoiselle?
I think you had better leave us to fight it out, if you don't mind.
Oh, perfectly, madame, mademoiselle, monsieur.
Don't ring, Joe. See the gentleman out yourself.
Oh, Amelia, this is your job. I leave you to your mother. I shall have my own say in the matter when I hear what you have to say to her.
It's just what the suffragette said to me in Holloway. Throws the job on you.
Margaret!
No, it's true.
Margaret, if you're going to be hardened about it, there's no use in me saying anything.
I'm not hardened, Mother, but I can't talk nonsense about it. You see, it's all real to me. I've suffered it. I've been shoved and bullied. I've had my arms twisted. I've been made to scream with pain in other ways. I've been flung into a filthy cell with a lot of other poor wretches, as if I were a sack of coals being emptied into a cellar. And the only difference between me and the others was that I hit back. Yes, I did. And I did worse. I wasn't ladylike. I cursed, I called names, I heard words that I didn't even know that I knew coming out of my mouth, just as if somebody else had spoken them. The policeman repeated them in court. The magistrate said he could hardly believe it. The policeman held out his hand with his 2 teeth in it that I knocked out. I said it was all right, that I had heard myself using these words quite distinctly, and that I have taken the Good Conduct Prize for 3 years running at school. The poor old gentleman put me back for the missionary to find out who I was and to ascertain the state of my mind. I wouldn't tell, of course, for your sakes at home here. I wouldn't say I was sorry or apologize to the policeman or compensate him or anything of that sort. I wasn't sorry. The one thing that gave me any satisfaction was getting him that smack on his mouth, and I said so. So the missionary reported that I seemed hardened and that no doubt I would tell who I was after a day in prison. Then I was sentenced. So now you know I'm not a bit the sort of girl you thought me. I'm not a bit the sort of girl I thought myself. I don't know what sort of person you are really, or what sort of person Father really is. I wonder what he would say or do if he had an angry brute of a policeman twisting his arm with one hand and rushing him along by the nape of his neck with the other. He couldn't whirl his leg like a windmill or knock a policeman down by a glorious kick on the helmet. Oh, if we'd all fought as we two fought, we'd have beaten them.
But how did it all begin?
Oh, I don't know. It was a boat race night, they said.
Boat race night? But what had you to do with the boat race? You went to the Great Salvation Festival at Albert Hall with your aunt. She put you into the bus that passes the door. What made you get out of the bus?
I don't know. The meeting got on my nerves somehow. It was the singing, I suppose. You know, I love singing a good swinging hymn, and I felt it was ridiculous to go home in the bus after we'd been singing so wonderfully about climbing up the golden stairs to heaven. I wanted more music, more happiness, more life. I wanted some comrade who felt as I did. I felt exalted. It seemed mean to be afraid of anything. After all, what could anyone possibly do to me against my will? Suppose I was a little mad. At all events, I got out of the bus at Piccadilly Circus because there was a lot of light and excitement there. I walked up to Leicester Square and went into a giant theatre.
A theatre?
Yes, lots of other women were going in alone. I had to pay 5 shillings.
5 shillings?
It was a lot. It was very stuffy, and I didn't like the people much because they didn't seem to be enjoying themselves. But the stage was splendid and the music lovely. I saw that Frenchman, Monsieur de Villers, standing against a barrier smoking a cigarette. He seemed quite happy, and he was nice and sailor-like. I went in, stood beside him, hoping he would speak to me.
Oh, Margaret.
He did, just as if he had known me for years. We got on together like old friends. He asked me would I like to have some champagne, and I said it would cost too much, but that I would give anything for a dance. I longed to join the people on the stage and dance with them. One of them was the most beautiful dancer I had ever seen. He told me he had come there to see her, and that when it was over, we could go somewhere there was dancing. So we went to a place, there was a band and a gallery, and the floor cleared for dancing. A very few people danced. The women only wanted to show off their dresses. But we danced and danced until a lot of them joined in. We got quite reckless. We had champagne after all. I never enjoyed anything so much. But at last it got spoiled by the Oxford and Cambridge students up for the boat race. They got drunk and they began to smash things, and the police came in. Then it was quite horrible. The students fought the police, and the police suddenly got quite brutal and began to throw everybody downstairs. They attacked the women who were not doing anything and treated them just as roughly as they treated the students. Duvillers got quite indignant and remonstrated with the police, who was shoving a woman, though she was going quietly as fast as she could. The policeman flung the woman through the door and then turned on Duvillers. It was then Duvillers swung his leg like a windmill and knocked the policeman down. And then 3 policemen rushed at him and carried him out by the arms and legs face downwards. 2 more attacked me and gave me a shove against the door. That quite maddened me. I got in one good bang on the mouth of one of them. All the rest was dreadful. I was rushed through the streets to the police station. They kicked me with their knees, twisted my arms. They taunted and insulted me. They called me vile names. And I told them what I thought of them and provoked them to do their worst. There's one good thing about being hard hurt. Makes you sleep. I slept in that filthy cell with all the other drunks sounder than I should have slept at home. Can't describe how I felt the next morning. It was hideous, but the police were quite jolly, and everybody said it was a bit of English fun and talked about last year's boat race night when it had been a great deal worse. I was black and blue and sick and wretched, but the strange thing was that I wasn't sorry. And I'm not sorry. And I don't feel that I did anything wrong, really. Now that's all over, I'm rather proud of it. Though I know I'm not a lady, whether that's because we're only shopkeepers or because nobody's really a lady except when they're treated like ladies. I don't know.
But how could you bring yourself to do it, Margaret? I'm not blaming you. I only want to know. How could you bring yourself to do it?
I can't tell you. I don't understand it myself. The prayer meeting set me free somehow. I should have never done it if it were not for the prayer meeting.
Oh dear, don't say such a thing as that. I know that prayer can set us free, though you could never understand me when I told you so. But it sets us free for good, not for evil.
Then I suppose what I did was not evil, or else I was set free for evil as well as good. Father says you can't have anything both ways at once. When I was home and at school, I was what you call good, but I wasn't free. And when I got free, I was what most people would not call good. But I see no harm in what I did, though I see plenty in what other people did to me.
But I hope you don't think yourself a heroine of romance.
Oh, no. I'm a heroine of reality, or if you can call me a heroine at all. And reality is pretty brutal, pretty filthy if you come to grips with it. Yet it's glorious all the same. It's so real and satisfactory.
I don't like this spirit in you, Margaret. I don't like your talking to me in this tone.
It's no use, Mother. I don't care for you and Papa any less, but I shall never get back to the old way of talking again. Made sort of a descent into hell.
Margaret, such a word.
You should have heard all the words that were flying round that night. You should mix a little with people who don't understand any other words. But when I said about the descent into hell, I was not swearing. I was in earnest, like a preacher.
A preacher utters them in reverent tone of voice.
I know, the tone that shows they don't mean anything real to him. They use it to mean anything real to me. Now, hell is as real to me as a turnip. I suppose I should always speak of it like that. Anyhow, I've been there, and it seems to me now that nothing is worth doing but redeeming people from it.
They are redeemed already if they choose to believe it.
What's the use of that if they don't choose to believe it? You don't believe it yourself, or you wouldn't pay policemen to twist your arms. What's the good of pretending? That's all our respectability is, pretending. Thank heaven I've had it knocked out of me once and for all.
Margaret, don't talk like that. I can't bear to hear you talking wickedly. I could bear to hear the children of this world talking vainly and foolishly in the language of this world, but when I hear you justifying your wickedness in the words of grace, it's too horrible. It sounds like the devil making fun of religion. I've tried to bring you up to learn the happiness of religion. I've waited for you to find out that happiness is within ourselves and doesn't come from outward pleasures. I've prayed oftener than you think that you might be enlightened. But if all my hopes and all my prayers are to come to this, that you mix up my very words and thoughts with the promptings of the devil, then I don't know what I shall do. I don't indeed, till kill me.
You shouldn't have prayed for me to be enlightened if you didn't want me to be enlightened. If the truth were known, I suspect you will want our prayers to be answered only by halves, the agreeable halves. Your prayer didn't get answered by halves, Mother. You've got more than you bargained for in way of enlightenment. I shall never be the same again. I shall never speak in the old way again. I've been set free from this silly little hole of a house and all its pretenses. I know now that I am stronger than you and Papa. I haven't found that happiness of yours that is within yourself. But I found strength. For good or evil, I am set free, and none of the things that used to hold me can hold me now.
How long more are you going to keep me waiting, Amelia? Do you think I'm made of iron? What's the girl done? What are we going to do?
She's beyond my control, Joe, and beyond yours. I can't even pray for her now, for I don't know rightly what to pray for.
Oh, don't talk nonsense, woman. Is this a time for praying? Does anybody know? That's what we have to consider now. If only we can keep it dark, I don't care for anything else.
Don't hope for that, Father. Mind, I'll tell everybody. It ought to be told. It must be told.
Hold your tongue, you young hussy, or out of my house this instant.
I'm quite ready.
Here, where are you going?
You mustn't turn her out, Joe. I'll go if she does.
Who wants to turn her out? But is she going to ruin us? To let everybody know of her disgrace and shame? To tear me down from the position I've made for myself and you by 40 years of hard struggling?
Yes, I'm going to tear it all down. It stands between us and everything. I'll tell everybody.
Magsy, my child, don't bring down your father's hair with sorrow to the grave. There's only one thing I care about in the world: to keep this dark. I'm your father. I ask you here on my knees, in the dust, so to speak, not to let it out.
I'll tell everybody.
And curtain. But let's press right on with Act 3, since that was a fairly short act. All right. We're again at in the Gilbys' dining room. It's afternoon. The table is not laid. It is draped in its ordinary cloth with pen and ink and an exercise book and school books on it. Bobby Gilby is in the armchair, crouching over the fire, reading an illustrated paper. He gets up to ring the bell, then resumes his crouch.
Juggins,
Sir,
sir be blowed.
not at all, sir.
I'm a jailbird. You're a respectable man.
That doesn't matter, sir. Your father pays me to call you sir, and as I take his money, I keep my part of the bargain.
Would you call me sir if you weren't paid to do it?
No, sir.
I've been talking to Dora about you.
Indeed, sir.
Yes. Dora says your name can't be Juggins and that you have the manners of a gentleman. I always thought you hadn't any manners. Anyhow, your manners are different from the manners of a gentleman in my set.
They would be, sir.
You don't feel disposed to be communicative on the subject of Dora's notion, I suppose?
No, sir.
It was part of your bargain that you were to valet me a bit, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
Well, can you tell me the proper way to get out of an engagement to a girl without getting into a row for breach of promise or behaving like a regular cad?
No, sir. You can't get out of an engagement without behaving like a cad if the lady wishes to hold you to it.
But it wouldn't be for her happiness to marry me when I don't really care for her.
Women don't always marry for happiness, sir. They often marry because they wish to be married. Women and not old maids.
Then what am I to do?
Marry her, sir, or behave like a cad.
Well, I won't marry her. That's flat. What would you do if you were in my place?
I should tell the young lady that I found I couldn't fulfill my engagement.
But you'd have to have some excuse, you know. I want to give it a gentlemanly turn, to say, I'm not worthy of her, or something like that.
That is not a gentlemanly turn, sir. Quite the contrary.
I don't see that at all. Do you mean that it's not exactly true?
Not at all, sir.
I can say that no other girl can ever be to me what she's been. That would be quite true because her circumstances have been rather exceptional. And she'll imagine, I'm fonder of her than I can ever be of anyone else. You see, Juggins, a gentleman has to think of a girl's feelings.
If you wish to spare her feelings, sir, you can marry her. If you hurt her feelings by refusing, you had better not try to get credit for considerateness at the same time by pretending to spare them. She won't like it, and it will start an argument of which you will get the worse.
But you know, I'm not really worthy of her.
Probably she never supposed you were, sir.
Oh, I say, Juggins, you are a pessimist.
Anything else, sir?
You haven't been much use. You generally put me up to the correct way of doing things.
I assure you, sir, there's no correct way of jilting. It's not correct in itself.
I'll tell you what. I'll say I can't hold you to an engagement with a man who's been in court. That will do it.
Very dangerous, sir. No woman can deny herself the romantic luxury of self-sacrifice and forgiveness when they take the form of doing something agreeable. She's almost sure to say that your misfortune will draw her closer to you.
What a nuisance. I don't know what to do. You know, Juggins, your cool, simple-minded way of doing it wouldn't go down in Denmark Hill.
I dare say not, sir. No doubt you'd prefer to make it look like an act of self-sacrifice for her sake on your part, or provoke her to break the engagement herself. Both plans have been tried repeatedly and never with success, as far as my knowledge goes.
You have a devilish cool way of laying down the law. You know, in my class, you have to wrap things up a bit. Denmark Hill isn't Camberwell, you know.
I have noticed, sir, that Denmark Hill thinks that the higher you go in the social scale, the less sincerity is allowed, that only tramps and riffraff are quite sincere. That's a mistake. Tramps are often shameless, but they're never sincere. Swells, if I may use that convenient name for upper classes, pay much more with their cards on the table. If you tell the young lady that you want to jilt her and she calls you a pig, the tone of the transaction may leave much to be desired, but it'll be less Camberwellian than if you say you're not worthy.
Oh, I can't make you understand, Juggins. The girl isn't a scullery maid. I want to do it delicately.
A mistake, sir. Believe me, if you are not a born artist in that line. Beg pardon, sir. I think I heard the bell. Miss Knox.
Still grinding away for that Society of Arts examination, Bobby. You'll never pass.
No, I was just writing to you.
About what?
Oh, nothing. At least, how are you?
Quite well, thank you. How did you enjoy Brighton?
Brighton? I wasn't. Oh, yes, of course. Pretty well. Is your aunt all right?
My aunt? I suppose so. Haven't seen her for a month.
I thought you were staying down with her.
Oh, was that what they told you?
Yes. Why? Weren't you really?
No, I've got something to tell you. Sit down, let's be comfortable. You needn't do that if you don't like, Bobby. Suppose we get off duty for the day, just to see what it's like.
Off duty? What do you mean?
You know very well what I mean, Bobby. Did you ever care one little scrap for me in that sort of way? Oh, don't funk answering. I don't care a bit for you. That.
I beg your pardon, I'm sure. I thought you did.
Well, did you? Come, don't be mean. I've owned up. You can put it all on me if you like, but I don't believe you care any more than I do.
You mean we've both been shoved into it rather by the Pars and Mars?
Yes.
Well, it's not that I don't care for you. In fact, no girl can ever be to me exactly what you are. But we've been brought up so much together that it feels more like brother and sister than, than the other thing, doesn't it?
Just so. How did you find out the difference?
Oh, I say.
I found out from a Frenchman.
Oh, I say.
Did you learn it from a French woman? You know you must have learned it from somebody.
No, not a French woman. She was quite a nice woman, but she's been rather unfortunate. The daughter of a clergyman.
Oh, Bobby, that sort of woman.
What sort of woman?
Oh, you don't believe she's really a clergyman's daughter, do you, you silly boy? It's a stock joke.
You mean to say that you don't believe me?
No, I mean to say I don't believe her.
What do you know about her? What do you know at all about this sort of thing?
What sort of thing, Bobby?
Well, about life.
I've lived a lot since I saw you last. I wasn't at my aunt's. All that time that you were in Brighton, I mean.
I wasn't at Brighton, Meg. I'd better tell you. You're bound to find out sooner or later. Meg, it's rather awful. You'll think me no end of a beast. I've been in prison.
You?
Yes, me. For being drunk and assaulting the police.
Do you mean to say that you... Oh, this is letdown for me.
Of course, I couldn't hold you to our engagement after that. I was writing to you to break it off. You must think me not a rotter.
Oh, has everybody been in prison for being drunk and assaulting the police? How long were you in?
A fortnight.
Oh, that's what I was in for.
What are you talking about? In where?
In quad.
But I'm serious. I'm not rotting. Really and truly.
What did you do to the copper?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He exaggerated grossly. I only laughed at him.
I've beaten you hollow. I knocked out 2 of his teeth. I've got one of them. He sold it to me for 10 shillings.
No, please do stop fooling, Meg. I tell you, I'm not rotting.
And I tell you, I'm not either. Look, here's a report of it. The daily papers are no good, but the Sunday papers are splendid. See? Hardened at 18, a quietly dressed, respectable-looking girl who refuses her name. That's me.
Do you mean to say that you went on the loose out of pure devilment?
I did no harm. I went to see a lovely dance. I picked up a nice man and went to have a dance myself. I can't imagine anything more innocent and more happy. All the bad part was done by other people. They did it out of pure devilment, if you like. Anyhow, here we are, 2 jailbirds, Bobby, disgraced forever. Isn't it a relief?
But you know, it's not the same for a girl. A man may do things a woman mayn't.
Are you scandalized, Bobby?
Well, you can't expect me to approve of it, can you, Meg? I never thought you were that sort of girl.
I'm not. You mustn't pretend to think that I'm a clergyman's daughter, Bobby.
I wish you wouldn't chap about that. Don't forget the row you got into for letting out that you admired Juggins, a footman. And what about the Frenchman?
I know nothing about the Frenchman except that he's a very nice fellow and can swing his leg round like the hand of a clock and knock a policeman down with it. He was in Wormwood Scrubs with you. I was in Holloway.
It's all very well to make light of it, Meg, but this is a bit thick, you know.
Do you feel you couldn't marry a woman who's been in prison?
No, I never said that. It might even give a woman a greater claim on a man. Any girl, if she were thoughtless and a bit on, perhaps might get into a scrape. Anyone who really understood her character could see there was no harm in it. But you're not the larky sort. At least you usedn't to be.
I'm not, and I never will be. I didn't do it for a lark, Bob. I did it out of the very depths of my nature. I did it because I'm that sort of person. I did it in one of my religious fits. I'm hardened at 18, as they say. So, what about the match now?
Well, I don't think you can fairly hold me to it, Meg. Of course, it would be ridiculous for me to set up to be shocked or anything of that sort. I can't afford to throw stones at anybody, and I don't pretend to. I can understand a lark. I can forgive a slip, as long as it is understood that it only is a lark or a slip. But to go on the loose on principle, to talk about religion in connection to it, well, Meg, I do find that a bit thick, I must say. I hope you're not in earnest when you talk that way.
Bobby, you're no good. No good to me, anyhow.
I'm sorry, Miss Knox.
Goodbye, Mr. Gidley. I suppose you won't introduce me to the clergyman's daughter.
I don't think she'd like it. There are limits, after all.
Ring the bell, Bobby, and tell Juggins to show me out.
I'm not a cad, Meg.
Then do something nice to prevent us feeling mean about this afterwards. You'd better kiss me. You needn't ever do it again.
If I'm no good, I don't see what fun it would be for you.
Oh, it'd be no fun. If I wanted what you call fun, I would ask the Frenchman to kiss me. Or Juggins.
Oh, don't be disgusting, Meg. Don't be low.
Now I'll make you kiss me just to punish you.
No, stop. Leave go, will you?
Miss Delaney, sir.
Well, you are a Juggins to show me up when there's company. It's all right, dear, all right, old man. I'll wait in Juggins' pantry till you're disengaged.
Don't you know me?
Why, it's never number 406.
Yes, it is.
Well, I should never have known you out of uniform. How did you get out? You were doing a month, weren't you?
My bloke paid the fine the day he got out himself.
A real gentleman. Look at him, he can't take it in.
I suppose you made her acquaintance in prison, Meg? But when it comes to talking about blokes and all, well,
I've learned the language and I like it. It's another barrier broken down.
It's not so much the language, Meg, but I think.
What do you think, Bobby?
He thinks you oughtn't be so free with me, dearie. It does him credit. He always was a gentleman, you know.
Does him credit? To insult you like that? Bobby, say that wasn't what you meant.
I didn't say that it was.
Well, deny that it was.
No, I wouldn't have said it in front of Dora, but I do think it's not quite the same thing, my knowing her and you knowing her.
Of course it isn't, old man. I'll just trot off and come back in a half an hour. You two can make it up together. I'm really not fit company for you, dearie. I couldn't live up to you.
Stop. Do you believe he could live up to me?
Well, I'll never say anything to stand between a girl and a respectable marriage, or to stop a decent lad from settling himself. I've a conscience, though I mayn't be as particular as some.
You seem to be a very decent sort. Bobby's behaving like a skunk.
Nice language, that.
Well, dearie, men have to do some awfully mean things to keep up their respectability. But you can't blame them for that, can you? I've met Bobby walking with his mother, and of course, he cut me dead. I won't pretend I liked it, but what could he do, poor dear?
And now he wants me to cut you dead to keep him in countenance. Well, I shan't. Not if my whole family were there. But I'll cut him dead if he doesn't treat you properly. I'll educate you, you young beast.
Who are you calling a beast?
You!
Now, dearies.
If you don't take care, you'll get your fat head jolly well clouted.
If you don't take care, the policeman's tooth will only be the beginning of a collection.
Now, Luffies, be good.
Cat, I'll teach you.
Pig! Beast!
Juggins, they'll murder one another.
Monsieur du Valet.
Oh, I fear I derange you.
Not at all. Bobby, you really are a beast. Monsieur Duvalet will think I'm always fighting.
Practicing jiu-jitsu or the new Iceland wrestling. Admirable, Miss Knox. The athletic young Englishwoman is an example to all Europe. Your instructor, no doubt, monsieur?
How do you do?
I'm so sorry, Bobby. I asked Mr. Duvalet to call for me here. And I forgot to tell you. Monsieur Duvalet, Miss 407, Mr. Bobby Gilby. I really don't know how to explain our relationships. Bobby and I are like brother and sister.
Oh, perfectly. I noticed it.
Bobby and Miss...
Dear, darling Dora to friends.
Bobby and Dora are, well, not brother and sister.
Perfectly.
Bobby has spent the last fortnight in prison. You don't mind, do you?
No, naturally. I have spent the last fortnight in prison.
Dora has spent the last fortnight in prison.
Quite so. I felicitate mademoiselle on her enlargement.
Merci, as they say in Boulogne. No call to be stiff with one another, have we?
Beg pardon, sir. Mr. and Mrs. Gilby are coming up the street.
Let's absquatulate.
Yeah. If you wish to leave without being seen, you'd better step into my pantry and leave afterwards.
Right-o! Hide me in the meat safe till the clock goes by. Hum the dear old music as the step draws nigh.
I won't stay here if she has to hide. I'll keep her company in the pantry.
Let's all go. We can't have any fun with the Ma here. I say, Juggins, can you give us tea in the pantry, can't you?
Certainly, sir.
Right. Say nothing to my mother. You don't mind Mr. Duvalet, do you?
I shall be charmed.
Right you are. Come along. Oh, by the way, Juggins, fetch down that concertina from my room.
Yes, sir. You understand, sir, that Miss Knox is a lady absolutely comme il faut.
Perfectly. But the other?
The other, sir, may be both charitably and accurately described in your native idiom as a daughter of joy.
It is as I thought. These English domestic interiors are very interesting.
Did you smell scent in the hall, Rob?
No, no, I didn't, and I don't want to smell it. Now, don't you go looking for trouble, Maria.
She's been here. What are you ringing for? Are you going to ask?
No, I'm not going to ask. Juggins said this morning that he wanted to speak to me. If he likes to tell me, let him, but I'm not going to ask. And don't you either. You said you wanted to say something to me.
When it would be convenient to you, sir.
Well, what is it?
Oh, Juggins, we're expecting Mr. and Mrs. Knox to tea.
He knows that. What is it?
Would it inconvenience you, sir, if I was to give you a month's notice?
What? Why? Ain't you satisfied?
Perfectly, sir. It's not that I want to better myself, I assure you.
Well, what do you want to leave for then? I mean, do you want to worsen yourself?
No, sir. I've been well treated in your most comfortable establishment, and I should be greatly distressed if you or Mrs. Gilby were to interpret my notice as an expression of dissatisfaction.
Now, look, you listen to me, Juggins. I'm an older man than you. Don't throw out the dirty water until you get in fresh. Don't get too big for your boots. You're like all servants nowadays. You think you've only to hold up your finger and get your pick of half a dozen jobs. But you won't be treated everywhere as you're treated here. In bed every night before 11, hardly a ring at the door except on Mrs. Gilby's day, well, once a month, and no other manservant to interfere with you. Now, it may be a bit quiet, perhaps, but you're past the age of adventure. Now, take my advice and think it over. You suit me, and I'm prepared to make it suit you if you're dissatisfied. Within reason, you know.
I realize my advantages, sir, but I've private reasons.
Oh, I know. Very well. Go. Sooner the better.
Oh, not until we're suited. He must stay his month.
Do you want him to lose his character, Maria? Do you think I don't see what it is? We're prison folk now. We've been to police court. Well, I suppose you know your own business best. I take your notice. You can go when the month is up, or sooner if you like.
Believe me, sir,
That's enough, I don't want any excuses. I don't blame you. You can go downstairs now if you've got nothing more to trouble me about.
I really can't leave it at that, sir. I assure you, I've no objection to young Mr. Gilby's going to prison. You may do 6 months yourself, sir, and welcome, without a word of remonstrance from me. I'm leaving solely because my brother, who has suffered a bereavement and feels lonely, begs me to spend a few months with him until he gets over it.
And is he to keep you all that time, or are you to spend your savings in comforting him? Have some sense, man. How can you afford such things?
My brother can afford to keep me, sir. The truth is, he objects to my being in service.
Well, is that any reason why you should be dependent upon him? Don't do it, Juggins. Juggins, pay your own way like an honest lad, and don't eat your brother's bread while you're able to earn your own.
There is some sense in that, sir. But unfortunately, it is a tradition in my family that the younger brothers should sponge to a considerable extent on the elder.
Well, the sooner that tradition is broken, the better, my man.
A radical sentiment, sir, but an excellent one.
Radical? What do you mean? Don't you begin to take liberties, Juggins, now that you know we're loath to part with you. Your brother isn't a duke, you know.
Unfortunately, he is, sir.
What?
James.
Maria, did you understand him to say his brother was a duke? Go answer the bell, Juggins. Did you understand him to say his brother was a duke?
Oh, fancy his condescending. Perhaps if you'd offer to raise his wages and treat him as one of the family, he'd stay.
And have my own servant above me? No, not me. What is the world coming to? I mean, here's Bobby and
Mr. and Mrs. Knox.
How are you, dear?
Nicely, thank you. Good evening, Mr. Gilby.
I was just saying, Knox, what is the world coming to?
What was I saying myself only this morning?
This is a strange time. I was never one to talk about the end of the world, but look at the things that have happened.
Earthquakes.
San Francisco.
Jamaica.
Martinique.
Messina.
The plague in China.
Oh, the floods in France.
My Bobby in Wormwood Scrubs.
Margaret in Holloway.
Now my footman tells me that his brother's a duke.
No!
That's just before he let you in. A duke. Here has everything been respectable from the beginning of the world, as you may say, to the present day, and all of a sudden, everything is turned upside down.
It's like in the book of Revelations. But I do say that unless people have happiness within themselves, all the earthquakes, all the floods, and all the prisons in the world can't make them really happy.
It isn't alone the curious things that are happening, But the unnatural way people are taking them. Why, there's Margaret, been in prison, and she hasn't time to go to all the invitations she's had from people that never asked her before.
I never knew we could live without being respectable.
Oh, Rob, what a thing to say. Who says we're not respectable?
Well, it's not what I call respectable to have your children in and out of jail.
Oh, come, Gilby. We're not tramps because we've had, as it were, an accident.
It's no use, Knox. Look at it in the face. Did I ever tell you my father drank?
No, but I knew it. Simmons told me.
Yes, he could never keep his mouth shut. He told me your aunt was a kleptomaniac.
It wasn't true, Mr. Gilby. She used to pick up handkerchiefs if she saw them lying about, but you might trust her with untold silver.
Oh. My Uncle Phil was a teetotaler. My father used to say to me, Rob, he says, don't you ever have a weakness. If you find one getting a hold on you, make a merit of it, he says. Your Uncle Phil doesn't like spirits, and he makes a merit of it, and is chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee. Now, I do like spirits, and I make a merit of it, and I'm the king cockatoo of the convivial cockatoos. Never put yourself in the wrong, he says. I used to boast about what a good boy Bobby was. Now I swank about what a dog he is, and it pleases people just as well. What a world it is.
It turned my blood cold at first to hear Margaret telling people about Holloway, but it goes down better than her singing used to.
I never thought she sang right after all those lessons we paid for.
Lord Knox, it was lucky you and me got let in together. I tell you straight, if it hadn't been for Bobby's disgrace, I'd have broken up the firm.
Well, I shouldn't have blamed you. I'd have done the same, only for Margaret. Too much straight-lacedness narrows a man's mind. Well, talking of that, what about those hygienic corset advertisements that Vines and Jackson want us to put in the window? I told Vines they weren't decent and we couldn't show them in our shop. I was pretty high with him. But what am I to say to him now if he comes and throws his business in our teeth?
Oh, put him in. We may as well go it a bit now.
You've been going it quite far enough, Rob. He won't get up in the mornings now. He, that was always out of bed at 7 to the tick.
He's taken to whiskey and soda, a pint a week, and the beer the same as before.
Oh, don't preach, old girl.
That's a new name he's got for me. I tell you, Joe, this doesn't sit well on you. You may call it preaching if you like, but it's truth for all that. I say that if you've happiness within yourself, you don't need to seek it outside. Spending money on drink and theatres and bad company and being miserable after all. You can sit at home and be happy. You can work and be happy. If you have that in you, the Spirit will set you free and do what you want and guide you to do right. But if you haven't got it, then you'd best be respectable and stick to the ways that were marked out for you. For you've nothing else to keep you straight.
And is a man never to have a bit of fun? See what comes of it with your daughter. She was to be content with your happiness that you're always talking about. And how did the Spirit guide her to a month's hard for being drunk and assaulting the police? Did I ever assault the police?
You wouldn't have the courage. I don't blame the girl.
What? You so pious?
She went where the Spirit guided her. And what harm there was in it if she knew nothing about it?
Oh, come, Mrs. Knox. Girls are not so innocent as all that.
I don't say she was ignorant, but I do say that she didn't know what we know. I mean, the way certain temptations get a sudden hold that no goodness nor self-control is any use against. She was saved from that and had a rough lesson too. And I say it was no earthly protection that did that. But don't think, you two men, that you'll be protected if you make what she did an excuse to go and do as you'd like to do, if it wasn't for fear of losing your characters. The Spirit won't guide you because it isn't in you, and it never had been, nor in either of you.
Well, I'm sure obligated to you for your good opinion, Mrs. Knox.
Well, I will say for you, Mr. Gilby, that you're better than my man here. He's a bitter, hard heathen, is my Joe. God help me.
Now, don't take on like that, Amelia. You know I always give in to you that you were right in about religion. But one of us had to think of other things, or we'd have starved, we and the child.
How do you know you'd have starved? All the things might have been added unto you.
Oh, come, Mrs. Knox, don't tell me Knox is a sinner. I know better. I'm sure you'd be the first to be sorry if anything was to happen to him.
You've always had some grudge against me, and nobody but yourself can understand what it is.
I wanted a man who had happiness within himself. You made me think you had it, but it was nothing but being in love with me.
Do you blame him for that?
I blame nobody, but let him not think he can walk by his own light. I tell him that if he gives up being respectable, he'll go right down to the bottom of the hill. He has no powers inside of himself to keep steady, so let him cling to the powers outside him.
Who wants to give up being respectable? All this for a pint of whiskey that lasted a week. How long would it have lasted Simmons, I wonder?
Well, say no more, Joe. I won't plague you about it. You never did understand, and you never will. Hardly anybody understands. Even Margaret didn't understand it till she went to prison. She does now. And I shall have a companion in the house after all these lonely years.
I did all I could to make you happy. I never said a harsh word to you.
What right have you to treat a man like that? An honest, respectable husband, as if he were dirt under your feet.
Oh, let her alone, Gilby.
Well, you gave me all you could, Joe, and if it wasn't what I wanted, that wasn't your fault. But I'd rather have you as you were than since you took to whiskey and soda.
I don't want any whiskey and soda. I'll take the pledge if you like.
No, you shall have your beer because you like it. The whiskey was only a brag. And if you and me are to remain friends, Mr. Gilby, you'll get up tomorrow morning at 7.
Damn if I will. There.
How do you know, Mr. Gilby, what you will do tomorrow morning?
Why shouldn't I know? Are we children not to be let do what we like, and our own sons and daughters kicking their heels all over the place? I was never one to interfere between man and wife, Knox, but if Maria started ordering me around like that.
Now, don't be naughty, Rob. You know, you mustn't set yourself up against religion.
Who's setting himself up against religion?
Doesn't matter whether you set yourself up against it or not, Mr. Gilby. If it sets itself up against you, you'll have to go the appointed way. It's no use quarreling about it with me. It's no use quarreling about it with me that I'm as great a sinner as yourself.
Oh, indeed. And who told you I was a sinner?
Now, Rob, you know we are all sinners. What else is religion?
I say nothing against religion. I suppose we're all sinners in a manner of speaking, but I don't like to have it thrown at me as if I'd really done anything.
Mrs. Knox is speaking for your good, Rob.
Well, I don't like being spoken to for my good. Would anybody like it?
Don't take offense where none is meant, Mr. Gilby. Talk about something else. No good ever comes of arguing about such things among the likes of us.
The like of us? Are you throwing it in our teeth that your people were in the wholesale and thought Knox and Gilby wasn't good enough for you?
No, Joe. You know I'm not. What better were my people than yours for all their pride? But I've noticed in all my life, we're ignorant. We don't really know what's right and what's wrong. We're all right as long as things go on the way they always did. We bring our children up just as we were brought up, and we go to church or chapel just as our parents did. And we say what everybody says, and it goes on all right until something out of the way happens. There's a family quarrel, or one of the children goes wrong, or a father takes a drink, or an aunt goes mad, or one of us finds ourselves doing something we never thought we'd want to do. And then you know what happens? Complaints and quarrels and huffs and offense and bad language and bad temper and regular bewilderment, as if Satan possessed us all. We find out then, with all our respectability and piety, we've no real religion and no way of telling right from wrong. We've nothing but our habits. And when they're upset, where are we? Just like Peter in the storm trying to walk on the water and finding he couldn't.
Aye, he found out, didn't he?
I've never denied that you've a great intellect, Mrs. Knox.
Oh, get along with you, Gilby. You begin talking about my intellect. Give us some tea, Maria. I've said my say, and I'm sure I beg the company's pardon for being so long about it and so disagreeable.
Ring, Rob. Oh, stop. Juggins will think we're ringing for him.
Oh, it's too late. I rang before I thought of it.
Oh, step down and apologize, Rob.
Is it him that you said was brother to
I didn't mean to ask you to do this, Mr. Juggins. I wasn't thinking when I rang.
Let me, Juggins.
Oh, please sit down, madam. Allow me to discharge my duties just as usual, sir. I assure you that is the correct thing.
Is this all right, Gilby? Anybody may be the son of a duke, you know. Is he legitimate?
Good Lord, I never thought of that. You ask him.
Just a word with you, my man. Was your mother married to your father?
I believe so, sir. I can't say from personal knowledge. It was before my time.
Yeah, well, but look here, you know...
Yes,
Knox.
I know what'll clinch it, Gilby. You leave it to me. Was your mother a duchess?
Oh, yes, sir. Quite correct, sir, I assure you. That is the milk, madam. This is the water.
What did I tell you? Here's something out of the common happening with a servant, and we, none of us, know how to behave.
It's quite simple, madam. I'm a footman and should be treated as a footman.
Oh, what's that noise? Is Master Bobby at home? I heard his laugh.
I'm sure I heard Margaret's.
Not a bit of it. That was that woman.
I can explain, sir. I must ask you to excuse the liberty, but I'm entertaining a small party to tea in my pantry.
But you're not entertaining Master Bobby.
Yes, madam.
Who's with him?
Miss Knox, sir.
Miss Knox, are you sure? Is there anyone else?
Only a French marine officer, sir, and Miss Delaney. The lady that called about Mr. Bobby, sir.
Do you mean to say they're having a party all to themselves downstairs, and we're having a party up here and knowing nothing about it?
Yes, sir. I have to do a good deal of entertaining in the pantry for Master Bobby, sir.
Well, this is a nice state of things.
What's the meaning of it? What do they do it for?
To enjoy themselves, sir, I should think.
Enjoy themselves? Did ever anybody hear of such a thing?
Knox's daughter shown into my pantry.
Margaret mixing with a Frenchman and a footman. Well, she doesn't know about his grace, you know.
Well, perhaps she does. Does she, Mr. Juggins?
The other lady suspects, madam. They call me Rudolph, or the long-lost heir.
Oh, it's a much nicer name than Juggins. I think I'll call you by it, if you don't mind.
Not at all, madam.
Go and tell them to stop laughing. I mean, what right have they to make a noise like that?
I asked them not to laugh so loudly, sir. But the Frenchman gentleman always sets them off again.
Do you mean to tell me that my daughter laughs at a Frenchman's jokes?
We all know what French jokes are.
Believe me, sir, you do not. The noise this afternoon has all been because the Frenchman said that the cat had whooping cough.
Oh, well, I never.
Don't be a fool, Maria. Look here, Knox. We can't let this go on. People can't be allowed to behave like this.
Just what I say.
Oh, that's the Squiffer. He's bought it for her. Oh.
Well, of all the scandal...
I'll put a stop to this. Margaret! Margaret, I say.
Yes, Father? Shall we all come up? We're dying to.
Come up and be ashamed of yourselves, behaving like wild Indians.
Oh, don't, Bobby, no. I beg your pardon, Miss Ghibli, for coming in like that, but whenever I go upstairs in front of Robbie, he pretends it's a cat biting my ankles and I just must scream.
How do you do, Mrs. Gilby? Oh, let me introduce my friend, Lieutenant Duvalet, Mrs. Gilby, Mr. Gilby.
Now, Bobby, introduce me. There's a dear.
Mr. Laney, Mr. and Mrs. Knox.
Pleased to meet you. Thank you. Do you know what they've been doing downstairs? You'd never guess. They've been trying to teach me table manners. The lieutenant and Rudolph say I'm a regular pig. I'm sure I never knew there was anything wrong with me. But live and learn, eh, old dear?
Old dear is not correct, Mr. Laney.
I must call a man something. He doesn't mind, do you, Charlie?
Oh, his name isn't Charlie.
Excuse me, I call everybody Charlie.
You mustn't.
Oh, if I were to mind you, I should have to hold my tongue altogether, and then how sorry you'd be. Lord, how I do run on. Don't mind me, Mrs. Ghibli.
What I want to know is, what's to be the end of this? It's not for me to interfere between you and your son, Gilby. He knows his own intentions best, no doubt, and perhaps has told them to you. But I've my daughter to look after, and it's my duty as a parent to have a clear understanding about her. No good is ever done by beating about the bush. I asked Lieutenant, well, I don't speak French and I can't pronounce the name.
Mr. Duvalet, Father.
I asked Mr. Duvalet what his intentions are.
Oh, Father, how can you?
I'm afraid my knowledge of English is not enough to understand. Intentions? How?
He wants to know, will you marry me?
Silence!
I don't know.
But I am married already. I have 2 daughters.
You sit there after carrying on with my daughter and tell me coolly you're married?
Papa, you really must not tell people that they sit there.
Pardon, carrying on? What does that mean?
It means...
Hold your tongue, you shameless young hussy. Don't you dare say what it means.
What does it mean, Rudolph?
If it's not proper for her to say, it's not proper for a man to say either. Mr. Duvalet, you're a married man with daughters. Would you let them go about with a stranger, as you are to us, without wanting to know whether he intended to behave honorably?
Oh, Madam, my daughters are French girls. That is very different. It would not be correct for a French girl to go about alone and speak with men as the English and American girls do. That is why I so immensely admire the English people. You are so free, so unprejudiced. Your women are so brave and frank. Their minds are so, how do you say, wholesome. I intend to have my daughters educated in England. Nowhere else in the world but in England could I have met at the Variety Theatre a charming young lady of perfect respectability and enjoyed a dance with her at a public dancing saloon. And where else are women trained to box and knock out the teeth of policemen as a protest against injustice and violence? Your daughter, Madame, is superb. Your country is a model to the rest of Europe. If you were a Frenchman, stifled with prudery, hypocrisy, and the tyranny of the family and the home, you would understand how an enlightened Frenchman admires and envies your freedom, your broad-mindedness, and the fact that home life can hardly be said to exist in England. You have made an end of the despotism of the parent. The family council is unknown to you. Everywhere in these islands, one can enjoy the exhilarating, the soul-liberating spectacle of men quarreling with their brothers, defying their fathers, refusing to speak to their mothers. In France, we are not men. We are only sons, grown-up children. Here, one is a human being, an end in himself. Oh, Mrs. Knox, if only your military genius were equal to your moral genius, if that conquest of Europe by France, which inaugurated the new age after the revolution, had only been an English conquest, how much more enlightened the world would have been now. Alas, we can only fight. France is unconquerable. We impose our narrow ideas, our prejudices, our obsolete institutions, our insufferable pedantry on the world by brute force, by that stupid quality of military heroism, which shows how little we have evolved from the savage, nay, from the beast. We can charge like bulls, or we can spring on foes like gamecocks. When we are overpowered by reason, we can die fighting like rats. And we are foolish enough to be proud of it. Why should we be? Does the bull progress? Can you civilize the gamecock? Is there any future for the rat? We can't even fight intelligently. When we lose battles, it is because we have not sense enough to know that we are beaten. At Waterloo, had we known that we were beaten, we would have retreated, tried another plan, and won the battle. But no, we were too pig-headed to admit that there is anything impossible to a Frenchman. No, we were quite satisfied when our marshals had 6 horses shot under them and our stupid old grognards died fighting rather than surrender like reasonable human beings. Oh, think of your great General Wellington. Think of his inspiring words when the lady asked him whether British soldiers ever run away. All soldiers run away, madame, he said. But if there are supports for them to fall back on, it does not matter. Oh, think of your illustrious Nelson, always beaten on land, always victorious at sea, where his men could not run away. You are not dazzled and misled by false ideals of patriotic enthusiasm. Your honest and sensible statement demand for England a 2-power standard or even a 3-power standard, frankly admitting that it is wise to fight 3-1. Whilst we, fools and braggarts as we are, declare that every Frenchman is a host in himself and that when one Frenchman attacks 3 Englishmen, he is guilty of an act of cowardice, comparable to that when a man who strikes a woman. It is folly. It is nonsense. A Frenchman is not really stronger than a German, than an Italian, and even than an Englishman. So, if all Frenchwomen were like your daughter, if all Frenchmen had the good sense, the power of seeing things as they really are, the calm judgment, the open mind, the philosophic grasp, the foresight and true courage, which are so natural to you as an Englishman that you hardly are conscious of possessing them, France would be the greatest nation in the world.
3 cheers for old England.
Hurrah, and so say all of us.
This sort of talk is above me. Can you make anything out of it, Knox?
The long and short of it seems to be that he can't lawfully marry my daughter, as he ought after going to prison with her.
I'm ready to marry Bobby if that will be of any satisfaction.
No, you don't. Not if I know it.
Oh, he ought to, Mr. Gilby.
Well, if that's your religion, Amelia Knox, I want no more of it. Would you invite them to your house if you married her?
He ought to marry her whether or no.
I feel I ought to, Mrs. Knox.
Hold your tongue. Mind your own business.
If I'm not let marry her, I'll do something downright disgraceful. I'll enlist as a soldier.
That is not a disgrace, sir.
Not for you, perhaps, but you're only a footman. I'm a gentleman.
Don't dare to speak disrespectfully to Mr. Rudolph, Bobby. For shame.
It is not gentlemanly to regard the service of your country as disgraceful. It is gentlemanly to marry the lady you make love to.
My boy is to marry this woman and to be a social outcast.
Your boy and Miss Delaney will be inexorably condemned by respectable society to spend the rest of their days in precisely the sort of company they seem to like best and be most at home in.
And my daughter? Who's to marry my daughter?
Your daughter, sir, will probably marry whoever she makes up her mind to marry. She's a lady of very determined character.
Yes, if he'd have her with her character gone. But who would? You're the brother of a duke. What's
that?
Did I know you?
Yes, the brother of a duke. That's what he is. Well, would you marry her?
I was about to propose that solution to your problem, Mr. Knox.
Do you mean it?
As an idle younger son, unable to support myself or even to remain in the Guards in competition with the grandsons of American millionaires, I could not have aspired to Miss Knox's hand. But as a sober, honest, and industrious domestic servant who has, I trust, given satisfaction to his employer, I feel I am a man with a character. It is for Miss Knox to decide.
I got into a frightful row once for admiring you, Rudolph.
I should have got into an equally frightful row myself, miss, had I betrayed my admiration for you. I look forward to those weekly dinners.
But why did a gentleman like you stoop to be a footman?
He stooped to conquer.
Shut up, Dora. I want to hear.
I will explain, but only Mrs. Knox will understand. I once insulted a servant, rashly, for he was a sincere Christian. He rebuked me for trifling with a girl of his own class. I told him to remember what he was and to whom he was speaking. He said God would remember. I discharged him on the spot.
Very properly.
What right had he to mention such a thing to you?
What are servants coming to?
Did it come true, what he said?
It stuck like a poisoned arrow. It rankled for months. Then I gave in. I apprenticed myself to an old butler of ours who kept a hotel. He taught me my present business and got me a place as footman with Mr. Gilby. If ever I meet that man again, I shall be able to look him in the face.
Margaret, it's not on account of the Duke. Dukes are vanities, but take my advice and take him.
I have loved Juggins since the first day I beheld him. I felt instinctively he had been in the Guards. May he walk out with me, Mr. Gilby?
Oh, don't be vulgar, girl. Remember your new position. I suppose you're serious about this, Mr. Rudolph?
I propose, with your permission, to begin keeping company this afternoon, if Mr. Gilby can spare me.
It'll be long enough before you'll marry the sister of the Duke, you young good-for-nothing.
Oh, don't fret, old dear. Rudolph will teach me high-class manners. I call it a happy ending, don't you, Lieutenant?
In France, it would be impossible, but here, la belle Angleterre.
And on to the epilogue. Before the curtain, the Count, dazed and agitated, hurries to the four critics as they rise, bored and weary from their seats.
Gentlemen, do not speak to me. I implore you to withhold your opinion. I am not strong enough to bear it. I could never have believed it. Is this a play? Is this in any sense of the word art? Is it agreeable? Can it conceivably do good to any human being? Is it delicate? Do such people really exist? Excuse me, gentlemen. I speak from a wounded heart. There are private reasons for my discomposure. This play implies obscure, unjust, unkind reproaches and menaces to all of us who are parents.
Oh, pooh, you take it too seriously. After all, the thing has amusing passages. Dismiss the rest as impertinence.
Mr. Trotter, it is easy for you to play the procurantist You see hundreds of plays every year, but to me, who have never seen anything of this kind before, the effect of this play is terribly disquieting, sir. If it had been what people call an immoral play, I shouldn't have minded a bit. Love beautifies every romance and justifies every audacity. But there are reticences which everybody should respect. There are decencies too subtle to be put into words, without which human society would be unbearable. People could not talk to one another as those people talk. No child could speak to its parent. No girl could speak to a youth. No human creature could tear down the veils. Could they, sir?
Well, I don't see that.
You don't see it, don't feel it. Sir, I appeal to you.
It seems to me the most ordinary sort of old-fashioned Ibsenite drivel.
Mr. Trotter, will you tell me that you were not amazed, outraged, revolted, wounded in your deepest and holiest feelings by every word of this play, every tone, every implication, that you did not sit there shrinking in every fiber of your at the thought of what might come next?
Not a bit. Any clever modern girl could turn out that kind of thing by the yard.
Well then, sir, tomorrow I start for Venice, never to return. I must believe what you tell me. I perceive that you are not agitated, not surprised, not concerned. That my own horror, yes, gentlemen, horror of the very soul, appears unaccountable to you, ludicrous, absurd, even to you, Mr. Trotter, who are little younger than myself. Sir, if young people spoke to me like that, I should... Oh, Lord. I'm sorry, I've lost my place.
About 10 lines down, I should die of shame.
I know, I jumped to the end by accident.
Page 40 or 49.
Okay. I'm terribly sorry. The horror of the very soul appears unaccountable to you, ludicrous, absurd. Even to Trotter, who are little younger than myself, sir, if young people spoke to me like that, I should die of shame. I could not face it. I must go back. The world has passed me by and left me, accept the apologies of an elderly and no doubt ridiculous admirer of the art of a bygone day, when there was still some beauty in the world and some delicate grace in family life. But I promised my daughter your opinion, and I must keep my word. Gentlemen, you are the choice and master spirits of this age. You walk through it without bewilderment and face its strange products without dismay. Pray deliver your verdict, Mr. Banal. You know that it is the custom at a court-martial for the youngest officer present to deliver his judgment first, so that he may not be influenced by the authority of his elders. You are the youngest. What is your opinion of the play?
Well, who's it by?
That is a secret for the present.
You don't expect me to know what to say about a play when I don't know who the author is, do you?
Why not?
Why not? Why not? Suppose you had to write about a play by Pinero and one by Jones. Would you say exactly the same thing about them?
Well, I presume not.
Then how could you write about them until you know which was Pinero and which was Jones? Besides, what sort of play is this? That's what I want to know. Is it a comedy? Is it a tragedy? Is it a farce or a melodrama? Is it a repertory theatre tosh or really straight playing stuff?
Can't you tell from seeing it?
I can see it right enough, but how am I to know how to take it? Is it serious or is it spoof? If the author knows what his play is, then let him tell us what it is. If he doesn't, he can't complain if I don't know either. I'm not the author.
But is it a good play, Mr. Bernal? That's the simple question.
Simple enough when you know. If it's by a good author, it's a good play, naturally. That stands to reason. Who is the author? Tell me that, and I'll place the play for you in a hair's breadth.
I'm sorry, but I'm not at liberty to divulge the author's name. The author desires that the play should be judged on its merits.
But what merits can it have except the author's merits? Who would you say it's by, Gunn?
Well, who do you think? Here you have a rotten, old-fashioned domestic melodrama acted by the usual stage puppets. The hero's a naval lieutenant. All melodramatic heroes are naval lieutenants. The heroine gets into trouble by defying the law. If she didn't get into trouble, there'd be no drama. And plays for sympathy all the time as hard as she can. Her good old pious mother turns on her cruel father, plays for when he's going to put her out of the house and says she'll go too. Then there's the comic relief, the comic shopkeeper, the comic shopkeeper's wife, the comic footman who turns out to be a duke in disguise, and the young scapegrace who gives the author his excuse for dragging in fast young women, all as old and stale as a fried fish shop on a winter morning.
But
I know what you're going to say, Count. You're going to say that the whole thing seems to you to be quite new and unusual and original. The naval lieutenant is a Frenchman who cracks up the English, runs down the French. The hackneyed old Shaw touch. The characters are second-rate middle class. Instead of being duped millionaires, the heroine gets kicked through the mud, real mud. There's no plot. All the old stage conventions and puppets without the old ingenuity and the old enjoyment, and a feeble air of intellectual pretentiousness keeps up all through to persuade you that if the author hasn't written a good play, it's because he's too clever to stoop to anything so commonplace. And you three experienced men have sat through all this and can't tell me who wrote it. Why, the play bears the author's signature in every line.
Who?
Granville Barker, of course. Old Gilby is straight out of the Montrose house.
Poor old Barker?
Utter nonsense. Can't you see the difference in style?
No.
But do you know what style is?
Well, I suppose you'd call Trotter's uniform style, but it's not my style, since you ask me.
To me, it's perfectly plain who wrote the play. To begin with, it's intensely disagreeable. Therefore, it's not by Barry, in spite of the footman, who's cribbed from the admirable Crichton. He was an earl, you may remember. You will notice, too, that the author's offensive habit of saying silly things that have no real sense in them when you come to examine them, just to set all the fools in the house giggling. And what does it all come to? An attempt to expose the supposed hypocrisy of the Puritan middle class in England. People just as good as the author, anyhow. With, of course, the inevitable improper female, the Miss Tanqueray, Iris, and so forth. But if you can't recognize the author of that, you've mistaken your professions, that's all I have to say.
Why are you so down on Pinero? And what about the touch Gunn spotted? The Frenchman's long speech? I believe it's Shaw.
Oh, rubbish.
Rot. You may put that idea out of your head, Bernal. As close as this play is, there's the note of passion in it. You feel that beneath all the assumed levity of that poor waif and stray, she really loves Bobby and will be a good wife to him. Now, I've repeatedly proved that Shaw is physiologically incapable of a note of passion.
Yes, I know. Intellect without emotion. That's right. I've always said it myself. A giant brain, if you ask me, but no heart.
Oh, shut up, Bernal. This crude, medieval psychology of heart and brain, Shakespeare would have called it liver and wits, is really schoolboyish. Surely we've had enough of second-hand Schopenhauer. Even such a played-out old hack number as Ibsen would have been ashamed of it. Heart and brain, indeed.
You have neither one nor the other gun. You're decadent.
Decadent. Oh, how I love that early Victorian word.
Well, at all events, you can't deny that the characters in this play were quite distinguishable from one another. See, that proves it's not by Shaw, because all Shaw's characters are himself, mere puppets stuck up to spout Shaw. It's only the actors that make them seem different.
There's no doubt about that. Everybody knows it. But Shaw doesn't write his plays as plays. All he wants to do is insult everybody around and set us talking about him.
And naturally, here we are all talking about it. For heaven's sake, let us change the subject.
Still, my articles about Shaw.
Oh, stow it, Vaughan. Drop it. What I've always told you about Shaw.
Oh, there you go. Shaw. Don't chuck it. If you want to know my opinion about Shaw,
Shut up your head, Bow.
Oh, very well. Sorry I spoke, I'm sure.
Shaw.
I'm so sorry, gentlemen. It was such a success when I read it to the Cambridge Fabian Society.
Miss O'Dowda, I was about to tell these gentlemen when I guessed before the curtain rose that you are the author of this play.
And you all think it beastly, you hate it. You think I'm a conceited idiot and that I shall never be able to write anything decent.
No. I was just saying it must have been written by Pinero, didn't I, God?
Really?
I thought Pinero was much too popular for the Cambridge Fabian Society.
Oh, yes, of course, but still, did you really say that, Mr. Vaughan?
I owe you an apology, Miss O'Dowda. I said it was by Barker.
Granville Barker? Oh, you couldn't have really thought it so fine as that.
I said Bernard Shaw.
Oh, of course it would be a little like Bernard Shaw. Fabian touch, you know.
Mm-hmm. A jolly good little play, Miss O'Dowda. Mind, I don't say it's like one of Shakespeare's Hamlet or Lady of the Lions, you know, but still a first-rate little bit of work.
I also, Miss O'Dowda. Capital. Charming.
Only be true to yourself, Miss O'Dowda. Keep serious. Give up making silly jokes. Sustain the note of passion, and you'll do great things.
You think I have a future?
You have a past, Miss O'Dowda.
Shh.
A past? What do you mean, Mr. Trotter?
You can't deceive me. That bit about the police was real. You're a suffragette, Miss O'Dowda. You were on that deputation.
Fanny, is this true?
It is. I did a month with Lady Constance Lytton, and I'm prouder of it than I ever was of anything or shall ever be again.
Is that any reason why I should stuff naughty plays down my throat?
Yes, it'll teach you what it feels like to be forcibly fed.
She will never return to Venice. I feel now as I felt when the Campanile fell.
Would you mind coming to say a word of congratulation to the company? They're rather upset at having had no curtain call.
Certainly. I'm afraid I've been rather remiss. Let us go on the stage, gentlemen. Whatever we may think of the play, gentlemen, I'm sure you will agree with me that here there can only be one opinion about the acting.
Hear.
Here.
Thank you, everyone. Lovely reading. We started out rather with an echo chamber, but it seemed to calm down.
Sorry about the that I got lost there.
Well,
I hit
happens.
Yeah, David, you're fired.
So many people have that happen to them.
That was great, guys. Thank you.
That was really
Yeah,
fun.
that was fun.
It's a very little known but rather fun play of Shaw's, you know.
Yeah, I'm surprised I've never really heard of it. I've never seen it done.
Yeah.
I guess it's because it kind of has to be done all in one. Like you can't really intermiss between the play in the play.
Mm.
I have a story to tell about the first time we read this with the Shaw Project, when we were doing all of Shaw's plays, the staged readings in sequence, pretty much. I had an actor who I won't mention his name, but he's rather.
Oh, please.
He's rather a pain in the neck. And he really wanted to do something with me. So I gave him the role of Lieutenant Duvalet. And he came in and read it very well, with the French accent and so on. Then he called me. We were talking. He said, I've decided I don't want to use the French accent because I saw somebody, I can't remember who it was, in a movie, and he was a French actor, and he spoke English perfectly without an accent. So I think that's the way Lieutenant Duvalet should do it. So I'm not going to use the accent. Well, I wanted the accent because I wanted him to be differentiated from the other characters. And we argued, but no, I'm not going to do it. No. My then wife prompted me as to how to handle the matter. And the next time I talked to him on the phone, we talked about it. And I said, well, actually, I'm only worried that if you don't use the French accent, the audience will think it's because you can't do one. And came back.
There you go. That'll get them.
By the way, Drew, that was a very nice accent, very consistent.
Oh, yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
wow.
Yep.
Shaw likes to have a character with an accent spout an aria at the end of 3 hours. Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, I really liked Fanny's play. I thought it was a lovely little comedy.
Yeah,
Well, it is.
I did too.
It is actually, it's Shaw writing a play that the audience, I'm sure, really enjoyed because it's a fun play.
And it was like
Everybody,
really.
I gotta go. Thank you. It's been great fun, but I gotta go. Bye bye.
All right. See you, Ben.
Good to see you.
The music, by the way, for the concert is all copied and will be coming out soon, Paula.
Oh, okay.
Within a couple of days, I hope to bring it into the city. So
Okay.
it's going to be an interesting. My big problem now is getting a